Alright. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to DeBrief. We're just going to wait to get some numbers. So, we got numbers already. Just wait to get some numbers. We ask that you also share the link so that we can get a really good show today. So we're asking that you share as much as possible. We're just going to take a couple of minutes as well and share with our people that are waiting to see the show. So welcome, Shane. Shane Lowe, who just signed in. I asked that you. Alright. Again, we're asking everyone to just share the link as well, so we can get a good conversation going. Share, Mr. Lashley. Good. Share to the groups. All the persons that are joining, just if you can work with us and just sharing the links, that would be appreciated, so that everybody could be on that was waiting. We ask as well that you like our page, you follow our page, so that we can get as much views and as much likes whenever the shows start. We ask that you also share your comments. We ask that you be respectful in sharing your comments as well, no explicits. And we appreciate all questions, all feedback as we carry on the show. All right. Good to go. All right. So again, everyone, we want to say a good night, and we want to welcome you to DeBrief TV Show. And tonight we have a specially invited guest. Mr. Stephen Lashley, former Minister of Sport, Youth and Culture. Culture, Sports and Youth. Is actually so they have it mixed up on.
It used to be Family, Culture, Sports and Youth.
Okay, so they have it mixed up online because I was trying to see which one come first, and they actually had Sports, Youth and.
It's actually Culture, Sports and Youth.
Culture. Okay, Culture, Sports and Youth would have been his last portfolio. He would also have been the past MP for Christchurch West Central as well, and here to discuss, have a conversation basically, and to talk and to take your view, take your questions, and just to have a pretty good, interesting conversation. So we're asking everybody to tune in. We're asking you to share the link. We're asking you to take part in the discussion. And again, I'm asking for a very rich, cordial discussion. Negativity away, and any derogatory or any messed up comments, as we like to say. So let me just put it there. Just one start.
Seminari has indicated he will soon be here.
Okay. I'll be waiting on Seminari. So again, your host tonight, oh look, I'm 25, I just turned away. Your host tonight is myself, Kimar Safri. I'm here with Jermaine Bedford. Say hi, Jermaine.
Hey.
Damani Small. I almost like to see it. So I'm Kimar Stewart, and on his way is Simon Ali. So again, everyone, we just want to welcome you to the DeBrief Show. And here again, just for those who join in, we're here with Mr. Stephen Lashley, former Minister of Culture, Sports and Youth, and also past parliamentarian representative for the constituency of Christchurch West Central, here with us on the DeBrief to have a conversation. And we ask that you share your comments. Let us know as we engage in the conversation, let us know. We pass the comments on. Be respectful. We are not taking any explicits on here as well. Your comments will be deleted if it has any cursing or anything on it that is not, or any defamatory remarks we will remove. So we ask that the conversation be as respectful as possible. So without further ado, Mr. Lashley, we really appreciate you taking the time out to come on the DeBrief to talk with us, to conversate with us. You know, we've known that after the election, we've still heard you a little bit in the media and what's not. We haven't heard you and seen you so much now, but we do thank you for taking the time out to come and talk with us. And welcome. Over to you.
Well, thank you, and let me say, you know, that I'm happy to be here. I want to say hi to all of the persons who are listening. This particular show being run by a group of young people, I think is certainly something that is important. I've always felt that the younger generation should become much more involved in discussing national issues. And therefore, this excites me because you guys are much younger than I am. I don't know if any of you would have been involved in public life in any way, but you're still involved because you live in Barbados.
Right.
And I think that you have a responsibility, because I think that young people have got to basically line themselves up to take on the gamut of managing the affairs of Barbados. I was part of a government for 10 years that did it, but governments come and governments go, and there has got to be a preparation for young people like yourselves to be involved in managing Barbados and also having views, advocating your views as strongly as possible. And I'm very happy to be a part of this and in a sense supporting a forum that I think is positive and that get people to talk about what's happening in Barbados.
No, thank you for coming, and we really appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule to be here and to conversate with us, as you said. One of the things I would really like to start the show off with is give us a little background as you were Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports, and some of the things that your ministry would have assisted in or implemented as it relates to youth, as it relates to culture and sports. So, you know, a snippet on the ministry and what you brought to life when you were in the ministry. Some of the things that you probably saw as well, and you had to make adjustments so that sports and youth and culture could be where you envisioned it or where your party envisioned it.
Okay. Well, I first of all entered the cabinet in 2010. I was not in the original cabinet. I was in the backbench, and I served in the parliament as the chairman of committees. So I was able to not only chair the proceedings, but I could have contributed to the debate. So I had a bit of both worlds. I entered the cabinet in 2008 as the Minister of Family.
So 2008 or 2010?
Sorry, 2010.
Okay.
As the Minister of Family, Youth and Sports. And then the portfolio of culture was added in 2011, I believe. But when I left the cabinet, of course, I was the Minister of Culture, Sports and Youth. I think the ministry that I had responsibility for had a tremendous responsibility to deal with a number of areas. In the area of culture, of course, culture is all invasive, but the government, of course, is responsible for the policy direction in a number of areas. Under the Ministry of Culture, the Division of Culture, you have the National Culture Foundation that is responsible essentially for the management and direction of creative talent. It manages the country's largest festival, which is Crop Over, and NIFCA as well. But it does a lot of training within the schools, and over the years I think the NCF has done a tremendous job in harnessing the talent of Barbadians and providing opportunities for training, and to that extent our focus essentially was to develop the capacity of the National Cultural Foundation to deliver on a number of important areas. We focus a lot on the National Independence Festival of Creative Arts. There's so many improvements that certainly would have taken place under that. One of the focus that I would say that occurred under the NIFCA was giving more impetus to the involvement of creative young talent there was a focus on encouraging the development of local music. One of the things we did was to develop or to introduce an award called the Jackie Open Award, which focused on rewarding those persons who created indigenous music. And I think that was excellent. We placed a lot of focus on Pan. One of the key events within Cropova that was introduced was Pan Fusion at Lara Court. I believe up to today the sponsor still remains committed to that event, and you would have seen the collision of talent, both local, international, the involvement of the community college, and exposing that talent has been really significant for them. And then Pan on the Sand has taken on a complete new and exciting focus. And Cropova, Cropova itself has mushroomed into being a major festival. We've created a number of empowerment tools, the vendors, for example. When I came into office, vendors, in order to get a license to play their trade on Kadooment and other events, had to line up at the NCF and camp overnight. And we put a stop to that by introducing a simple rule that if you have been consistently vended in Cropova for 3 years, you are guaranteed your space once you pay the fee. And the vendors, of course, would have indicated they wanted to pay in installments, and we did that. So Cropova itself became more people managed. It was a very consensus building environment. It was not a ministry led or NCF led, but it was based on collaboration, and that's where you had scarcely any controversies within Cropova, and I think that that's a plus. Within the wider cultural element, of course, Barbados would have received a huge impetus when it got the UNESCO designation of historic British Town and its garrison. I would have led the delegation to Paris to achieve that. And of course, the achievement, I must stress, was not just an achievement of Stephen Lashley as the minister or the ministry. This was a culmination of work that took place over many, many years. Many persons from not only the Democratic Party administration, but the DLP administration as well. But it mushroomed into a strong effort to place historic British Town and its garrison on the UNESCO World Heritage List, and we achieved that. There are other achievements, of course. We would introduce into Parliament the Cultural Industry Development Act, and of course created the Cultural Industries Authority, with a view to ensuring that the cultural industries can be seen as an emerging sector to generate much needed foreign exchange for Barbados. There's some, I believe, in terms of where it's going now, need for clarity in terms of what is the focus now that the Cultural Industries Authority is now under the umbrella of the NCF, and of course the needed amendments to the legislation and so on. But I think the focus in that area has been to ensure that we could put into a streamlined, incentive-driven industry setting the creative talent of Barbadians. In the area of sports, of course, that's essentially driven by the National Sports Council, but of course critical to that is the kind of policy focus of the ministry, and we worked very hard on coming up with when I left office, it was a draft policy, but pretty much completed, a policy that would create for Barbados a sporting industry and culture. And of course we looked at the whole question of restructuring the National Sports Council, but to do so within the context of an amalgamation, so to speak, of the Sports Council with the gymnasium as well as COMI. It has taken on a different kind of approach now, but I think ultimately the National Sports Council would have to be restructured and retooled to deliver on what is required in terms of national sports policy.
Restructured and retooled how, let me ask?
Well, we need to have a more professional approach to the management of sports. The council can do with some the introduction of professional persons whose job it is to ensure that the creativity of sports persons.
This is at the board level or
not
the
board level, I'm
administrative
talking about
level?
the operational level.
Okay, yeah.
Because a lot of what needs to happen needs to be cultured at the operational level, and there were a number of innovations that were put there to basically find and to place in the sports council trained individuals who understand the business of sports and who can actually assert themselves in a particular way. But it went beyond that. The restructuring would have included creating a properly structured accounts department headed by persons who were particularly aware of what is required to do that. Marketing was also going to be one focus of that. So
you were saying that as it currently is, the National Sports Council isn't more or less professionally set up.
Right, not in the way that I think it should be. The Sports Council, while it does a tremendous job, its visioning and certainly the kind of resources available to it can be improved to ensure that it can do its job better.
Third question. Do you agree that sports all over the world is a major benefit economically for a country? And with that said, why is that the governments have not pushed enough money into sports in Barbados? I'm not going to say obviously cricket because that takes a bit, but look at our national stadium to be at this point, whereas athletics is a big money earner. Football also, we know cricket already is. Why not tap into that kind of market? Football, tap into the athletics or stadium. We cannot have no athletic meets unless we go and pay UV to use it Usain Bolt complex. We have a national stadium that has been is
left
now,
room.
I mean, is in a deplorable state. Why was nothing done there?
Well, I agree with you that we have to focus on the national stadium. The first thing I did when I got in was we laid a brand new track at the National Stadium, which was IAAF certified for the first time in the history of Barbados. I remember going to the stadium and I was told that the track as laid, though it was old, could not be used to certify international times because the actual angles were wrong. And we spent an estimated $3.8 million to relay the entire track. That was meant to be the first phase. The ultimate phase was the complete, to construct a brand new stadium. That obviously would have required a significant amount of money, which of course we did not have at that time. But we did, the plans were there, we came in and found the plans. It's interesting to note that, even before we came to government, the Planning and Priorities Committee of the Cabinet would have earmarked that we needed a new stadium.
But you mentioned that we didn't have the money at that time. When you said at that time, what time you mean in terms of as up to 2018?
Well, as you know, we
entered cabinet
were
in 2010.
In 2010. So we were into a recession, a recessionary period. And therefore, the government did not have at its disposal the money that was required.
I disagree because we had a raise in VAT. We also had an SRL. We also had multiple taxes that went
But they were not.
We also had a lot
sports.
of cost overruns.
Yeah.
And I can assure you that some of those cost overruns, we don't know where the money went, but I'm sure that some of those cost overruns could have built probably 2 or 3 stadiums.
Well, and let me say this to you, right? From where I sat as the Minister of Sports, I would probably have argued continuously for funds to construct a stadium. Within the context of the priorities, I would say to you that perhaps my focus was that our priorities should have been so structured that we have a national stadium. And that's obviously water under the bridge, but I made tremendous argument to say that rather than do certain other things, not in terms of what you said about funds not being
so would you say that your arguments then weren't effective enough?
well, they didn't work, obviously.
What about
they didn't work because we didn't have the stadium.
Correct.
But I still feel, and any person who sat in the cabinet would tell you, that I held a very strong view that we need a national stadium, and the national stadium, as we envisioned it, had to be so structured to create the kind of impetus to encourage our young athletes and to bring foreign exchange into Barbados, because sports, as you said, is an international industry.
Is it really a lot of industry?
We have, I think, in the Bahamas and Jamaica, they are making a lot of money from what you call the the relay affairs.
You mentioned
Yes.
the cultural industries bill. I know particularly in like Europe, I know there's some element of a push to get cultural industries over into these type of markets. So I wonder if you could give us some information as it relates to our younger people, our artists and our dancers, our singers and what's not, about getting into these markets, because I don't believe the information is readily available for them to know what's on offer. So could you give us a bit of information in that regard?
Well, you see, the Culture Industries Development Authority, as created, was so structured to provide assistance to artists to basically move to the next level. And yes, many of the artists in Barbados currently do a lot of this on their own. They go outside of Barbados, they do gigs, they do whatever, but they are in need of support, both financial and otherwise. What we did within the ministry, even with very little funds, was to provide the kind of assistance, in many cases financial, to allow for artists to go outside of Barbados and to be supported. We listen a lot to what their requirements were. You wouldn't believe that many artists who go outside of Barbados find a lot of difficulty in things like transportation, in terms of persons who can organize when they go to various destinations. But it needs structure, and the way to have structured it was to create a dedicated authority to be able to provide that assistance, and that is why we created the Culture Industries Authority. But this, as you know, is at its infancy. It takes time. To a large extent, I believe then, and I'd argued at the time, that we need to see the creative sector as being an emerging sector that can bring a lot of benefit to Barbados. That has to be supported by the people who hold the purse strings in the country.
In that regard, though, given the fact that we are on the IMF program, and majority of government revenues go back into healthcare, education, and the social services, how do you push an argument to pump money into creative industries from government coffers as opposed to private investment? I do know that any private investment coming in, particularly from overseas, cultural industries will not be given a priority as it relates to receiving funds. So could you give us an idea of how you would fund it if given the opportunity again to do so?
Well, I just think that, you see, again, in order for Barbados to develop and grow, we have to change some of our priorities and our mindsets. I held the view, and I still hold the view, that whether you have a recession or not, you've got to, and it has to be led by government. Private sector will do some, but it has to be led by government, where you have to earmark funding to tease out and to encourage particularly those young people who are going to do some phenomenal things that will benefit your economy. I don't think there's any answer that tells me that, look, well, we're in a recession, we can't do that. And that's the mistake that I think governments have been making throughout the period that I'm aware in terms of it. You get into a recession and you say, okay, we can't do that because we don't have the money. I'm saying that unless you put resources behind the creative sector, sports, Barbados will always be in a situation of dependency. These are the sectors that will create the kind of economic platform for our young people to gain expression. And you just have to look at one example. And it happened, of course, because many people were surprised that Barbados now boasts of having the most acclaimed and richest creative talent in the world, Rihanna, in the form of Rihanna. Rihanna, of course, was discovered in Barbados, but there are many other Rihannas. And if we were to backtrack,
you also got Chantel.
Chantel, you have others. But you see, they represent an economic base. That if we can culture that base and encourage it and help more people to get on the international stage, then we would perhaps be able to solve some of the challenges we have. What Barbados, and before we go, what Barbados requires is, we've always required investment in the sense of foreign direct inflows of capital. What we never envision is that we can actually create the impetus of our own people getting on the international stage and sending those inflows into Barbados as well.
Before you go on, guys, I just want to remind the viewers that you can feel free to post your questions if you have any that you want to ask Mr. Lashley. And then you just share and share the comments and share the show as well. So.
Okay, outside of the economic benefits, there's a lot of social benefits to it also, because whereas you will have people performing at different locations, right now Beijing's complaining they don't have nothing to go to, they don't have something to go to. Some people will probably be off the block because they're able to go into a studio and record music, or learn how to do some acting, like a Simon, like a Robert Cope, and those kind of things. So it's more to economic benefits. You have some social benefits to it. But then also I want to bring to, it was drawn to my attention within the last couple of years, 3 or 4 years or so, we had a team that went to, I think it's Utah, for the senior games. And that was a very cheap and easy way for us to even advertise Barbados. And then when the team landed, they asked really memorabilia. There was no memorabilia. And how it is, you could take a whole team, Barbados team that does really, really good at the senior games, and do not have flags, pens, rags, whatever you name it, Barbados. For until you step off of that tarmac, you should know that Barbados team.
Right.
Why? And that happened like 10 under your government.
Right.
You're the minister though, but I think sports is in conjunction with you and
But
Stephen
that event though is totally not planned out by my ministry, but I accept the fact that what you're saying, the bigger point you're making, is that whenever we have an opportunity to expose Barbados and to market it, we should. And I agree with that. But we have to be proactive thinkers in that regard. It's not only, for example, the Utah persons, but we have persons who go outside of Barbados, whether it's in the culinary arts or whatever. They should carry memorabilia.
I would know that personally because in my last 10 years, outside of the fact that culture, but I do follow underneath youth, somebody that have been carrying the flag for 10 years straight, you know, representing Barbados at some of the highest level meetings. Sometimes you can't get anything as it relates to you know, carrying Barbados flag. Right. And sometimes it's hurtful that you go to places because sometimes the government is not in the position you are in. So you go and somebody tell you it's cultural night. And you wear your culture wear. Well, Barbados does not have the culture wear like some like let's say Japan or China, where they will come out, or the Indians will come out in the saris and stuff. Like you don't even got a pin on your shoulder. So somebody come and ask you what country you represent, you say Barbados, like, don't you guys have a flag? Like, yeah, but you don't even have it because sometimes you're not able to get access to this. Sometimes you can't get the trips because you don't have money to get the trips. But you can see that trip would be so beneficial to this.
I wouldn't even say you don't have it because
I think that leads to a deeper
right, but meaning but not only a culture, but also as a youth, as I saying, as a youth represented, because I paid everywhere I went, I paid my own money, which was fine. But I always still felt that my need was always to represent my country. But regardless of that, I just want to ask this question before we move on and keep on. I remember, I think, if it correct me, if it was closer to the election, you had come up with a $5 per person to assist in building the stadium. How did that go, and did that even capture any money or any attention from the public?
Well, I didn't come up with that.
Well, it's only a ministry, sorry.
Let me clarify. It was not something that we instituted as a policy. There was an idea that was put up from the public that perhaps we could start a campaign of asking each person to donate $10 to the stadium, but it was never something that we implemented. I thought it was a start, but of course I believe in listening to the pulse of people. I got the impression after a while that it was not something that, particularly in recessionary times, that persons were keen on jumping on and doing.
So no funds was collected from that, or not?
No, it was not anything that was actually initiated. I remember going to the stadium a couple of times and I walked through the stands and some people were saying, well, what are we going to do? And somebody said, well, that's something we could do. But it was something that I did ask the National Sports Council to investigate, but it was never a project.
But maybe if it was flipped and if it was advertised different, whereas, for example, if you come and say, well, if you give something towards the stadium, that's like an investment. I mean, there's billions in dollars, and as I said before, athletics.
But I don't think it was just on that. What from the comments I would have been getting at the time, and that you were seeing it, it also was on the fact of trust, that they felt that they didn't trust the government enough to give them money.
I understand that because when you want to give a government that is below there, that, you know, that money missing or whatever.
So people were.
So it's understandable.
The feedback that you were getting when you read the articles is like, why would they give a government my money that you don't even trust or whatever? I don't want to call it knowledge that they would use. But you know, people were very what is the correct word? Very, you know, in terms of giving their money to it, because they don't know where it will go, if it will go to the stadium.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Although that's the case, but remember, you're just giving $10 and just get a stadium. But if you had said, look, you give $10, that's some sort of investment in the
you know,
stadium.
you have asked a for a dollar.
When you have any international events, and you have we collecting money in, you know, there's something to
Let
get
me
back.
say this.
So,
I thought that the persons who raised the idea felt that any kind of people-driven effort, however small, could be a beginning. And I got that very clearly. And I took it as something that, you know what, maybe the Sports Council can have a look at it. But it's not anything that...
I want to give it out an
came
NGO
up
first.
but I still believe that, to tell the truth, I think Barbados, the amount of money that is required for the kind of stadium that Barbados
You have a
needs,
figure in mind, like what it would originally cost?
I think at the time that we were looking at it, we were talking about just over $50 million.
The state of the art, of course.
State of the art.
but in the same location.
In the same location.
How much money is that? 50 million?
Just over $50 million.
Okay.
Without acquiring any additional land?
Without acquiring any additional land.
So this figure included also the netball stadium or just the national stadium?
I think that included the netball stadium as well.
Okay.
How much money was raised towards it?
Well, we didn't raise money, but of course this was something that they would have to allocate within the context of the estimates. There was a time we were actually looking at, we got to a very advanced stage of approaching the Chinese government for a combination of either grant funding or soft loan to do that. But basically that's something that we were told would be earmarked in the future financial year. That would be after 2018.
Okay.
So was
Great, you got some question.
Right. I want to take the point back to the issue Kimura raised about culture having memorabilia to wear and what's not. I find that Barbados lack cultural substance among its people. You made the point about Japan and China and even Jamaica, when they go to the athletic meets or what's not, there's somewhat like a dance, a song, something that will give you the memory, constant memory of the cultural experience in the country. I find that Barbados does not have one of those per se. Right? Even if we do have it, we do not push it enough. So like our calypso and our food and what's not. We know that Jamaica is associated with Aki and sausage anywhere in the world. Right? There's even marijuana, Usain Bolt. So what I am saying or what I'm suggesting is we are our people. We said we are our people at the forefront of pushing our culture and what's Barbadian. Many persons come in here say that Barbados is just a amoeba society or a copycat society. We usually copy others even better than the people themselves. So I'm wondering, could you give us basically your utopia of the Barbadian culture coming forward?
I think I don't agree that Barbados don't have a vibrant culture. What I think is, and if you were to just spend or have an experience with our NIFCA experience, I mean there's so much talent. I think Barbados is bursting with talent and creativity. And if you look at what happens in NIFCA every year, there's so much rich original material that comes out of NIFCA, whether in terms of the visual arts alone, in terms of those persons who go there and create the kind of brilliant paintings and art and so on in different ways of expressions. I think all we have to do is we need to give that a showcasing opportunity. You know, one of the things that I had actually advocated, and I think that it should still be advocated, we have so much visual artists who create phenomenal work every day. But yet still we have hotels in Barbados that are given incentives, huge incentives, but nothing is tied to those incentives to make it a condition that if you're going to build a hotel in Barbados, you should be outfitting your walls with Barbadian art as a condition of receiving those incentives. I thought the same thing should have been done in relation to sandals, for example. And while the incentives were generous, I can tell you that my position was that link to that should have been something such as you have to dedicate X% of your expenditure
Our culture.
to adorn your walls with Barbadian art.
But you,
But not,
you
not
said
only,
you,
not only
you-
Barbadian art, but in terms of our
performance.
not only our art, the performances.
But I focus on
something
art.
as simple.
I focus on art
Culture.
because you see, for example, when hotels, it's not only Sandals. I mentioned Sandals, but all hotels, when they're doing refurbishments and so on, it is perhaps the thing to do to import huge amounts of prints.
Yeah.
From wherever they go, and I would probably say that most hotels don't have any Barbadian art in it. Do you know that they have that creative talent? You know how much money that our artists can make by knowing that they have a dedicated market. You know, and we're not begging for it because we're saying, look, we're giving you the opportunity of doing this in Barbados. You ask for incentives, which is an indirect way of the people paying investors to come to Barbados.
Yeah.
In return, what we're saying is that these are the things we need. And I still feel that this is something we should do now. I also feel that in relation to development, particularly around the immediate vicinities of hotels.
So you think that how the government is now pushing ahead with the Hyatt project?
Yes.
That's one suggestion that you would like to make for them.
Yeah. I've actually said it to the
Raise your voices,
to the
please.
developers and I've been assured that is something that they have on board already.
Okay.
But if you look at the Hyatt and where the Hyatt is located, within the parameters of the Hyatt is a huge opportunity to say to the investors, okay, well, you know, we have need for the immediate streets around the Hyatt to be done.
Yeah.
And while it is not going to be in your locale, then for the opportunity we're giving you, you should maintain these roads for the next 5 years.
So the question I would have to ask then is that while your government would have been the government in power at this time, yes, your government gave away some very generous concession to the Sandals.
Right.
Very, very, very generous into the sense that even the hotelers questioned it, that why they too wasn't given these concessions or some of these concessions rather.
Small hoteliers.
Right? No, the hotel. I'm going to say hotel. Right?
Because
hold on.
That Sandy Lane and those other
Hold on.
hotels in Barbados got concessions too.
Jeremy, hold on.
When you speak about Sandals, I like people to be balanced. I look at the other hotels which were in Barbados prior to Sandals,
All right.
which also got similar concessions which were not publicized.
Okay, however, I dealing with the fact that Barbados knew about the Sanders deal. And you're saying now that a lot of these hotels could have added to their portfolio culture. They could have added.
Someone is hearing an echo, but yeah.
Yeah, I deal with it. You said they added. You could have added painting. Let me go as far as say they could have added to make sure Barbadians benefited from the entertainment package, especially around Christmas, rather than flying in to do a hoodoo. They could fly in some locals, right? Was that a part, or why was that not a part of the Sandals package? That even if it echoed out there, we would have heard that Barbadians would have been benefiting from the Sandals in culture.
Right.
The youth would have been benefited as well. So I'm just asking if that was also in the deal, or why wasn't it in the deal?
Well, it wasn't the deal. I can't tell you why. The Sandals arrangements would have been handled by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and of course the Ministry of Tourism. You might find that as I echo to you my views and sentiments, it may tell you that the reality of cabinet government is that ministers don't always get what they articulate for. But it remains to me, even although it was not done, I would tell you that I felt it should have been done and it should be done now. It should be part and parcel. That I'm hearing some of the views of some of the current government along that same lines, and I think that that's something that should be supported. I think it makes sense within the context of what Barbados needs to do now to for its own development, and I think that is something that we're embraced by investors. The management of government affairs in Barbados, and I've certainly my experience in cabinet tells me oftentimes that while you will get some of the things you want done, some of the things you will not get done. And I think though that I am big enough to say that certainly there are some key ideas that I certainly would have pushed. Some of them I implemented, but there are others that could not have implemented. I guess for a number of reasons, resources, became to the end of government. But there is no idea that I think that is in the interest of Barbados, whether it is done under this government or a future government, that I would certainly oppose. I think that those things that are beneficial for Barbados, and that's my view of even how opposition parties should behave.
That's right.
I think we are in a very critical stage of our development. I think the people have passed judgment on the Democratic Party to a large extent.
You think it's fair judgment?
Whatever the people do is fair.
It's fair. Okay.
No, I feel that people have passed judgment in relation to government. I mean, in my prior life before I became a minister, I felt very strongly about the role of people in terms of taking control of the affairs of their country. So because I was in a government that the people made a judgment on, I cannot go against that. I feel that any government need to feel the sting of the people.
Right, before we continue the
from
show,
time to time.
I just want to say good night to Alicia and her husband. They both stopped me in town and said that, they love the show. I think it's a shirt and I didn't even know who they were. Sorry. And they love the show. They're on right now, both of her and her husband. We just want to say good night to them. Ryan Walters could you please ask the former minister, to list some of the accomplishments under his ministry. Well, it was under his control. He did that already. So okay,
There's
guys.
one I wanted to touch on.
Right. So just letting you know he did that already.
Only a few, but
Only a few,
to
but
mention all, I would have to take up the whole program.
But what I wanted to lead up from that though, minister, before Simon jumps in, is that I know that you spoke about the passing judgment. You welcome the judgment of the public, but what we could appreciate that as the public, what you could also appreciate is that there's some key members of your former administration that we heard you came out and said you apologize or basically upset.
So what I said, and that's why I did say earlier that anything that I say, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Democratic Party's executive. I'm not on the executive.
Right.
I'm a member of the party, and I have the right as an individual
The
citizen.
title it on.
What I did say though, I was delivering a lecture, the DLP's lunchtime lecture,
Right.
and I made this point. I said that even as the Democratic Party reflect on its achievements in government, the reality of what occurred in 2008 election was that we were found wanting.
2018.
2018, yes.
Yeah.
So,
2018.
we were found wanting by the people, and I said that the Democratic Party should not be ashamed to admit that mistakes were made.
Okay.
And that as a result of these mistakes, it led the country to taking the kind of decision that it took.
But let me ask you I just want to follow up question
The
on it.
problem was really that mistakes were made. I think it was that a lot of mistakes were made.
But a lot of mistakes.
A lot of
mistakes.
but-
But to balance that, you have to say, and I certainly made the point that there were achievements. I listed
course.
some even in my ministry.
right.
But there were no party.
Probably bad overdo the good.
No party can score the kind of defeat that was done.
But what the follow-up question I want to ask on the follow-up question I wanted to ask on that
Yes.
was that while you made the public acknowledgement that you did,
Right.
there were some of your colleagues that came out after, and for example, Bobby Morris, he said, what you gotta be ashamed of? What you gotta be apologizing for? But then they had another former minister that came out and even the senator at the time, I think it was Senator David Jones, that came out and said, hey, we have to own it to our defeat. We have to see why the people spoke. But then there were other people, and I think that you all were giving Bobby too much liberty on your platforms, because while you were, Bobby could say, yes, we appreciate that Stephen Lashley came out and said this. It sounded like if behind you were getting stone thrown at you for acknowledging that said which you just acknowledged.
Right.
So in my opinion, it sounded like we had some pig heads behind that. They don't understand.
Bobby Morris even said that the Democratic Party was the government in waiting the day after the election.
Yeah, but I mean, like, so people pass the judgment, which you have to respect, because the country has the power now at this particular junction. But at the same time, while you're apologizing or while you make acknowledgement to what transpired, you're getting beat down.
Yes.
Whatever you say, getting beat back down in the public by your side party. And the fact that he was also the campaign's manager is poor volume. How did that impact? How did that say?
Just to add what Kimura is saying. If you were the one that were leading at the time, the front of the stroke at the time, would you have done things differently? 1, 2. Do you have any regrets in terms of having Bobby Morris at the helm of the political? I just did. And 3. In terms of what would you have done different if you were the person that was running that campaign?
And next question
before. There's a mouthful. No. There's 2 more mouthfuls. Let's let me get one question.
Let me get a Jermaine and then me.
He's not as old as he used to be.
I would say that by nature, Stephen Lashley does things differently. And my philosophy is driven by a number of things that may not be what drives other people. I recognize and respect the fact that people have their own views. But I also recognize the fact that I may reserve the right to differ from them. I thought it was a fundamental mistake for Bobby Morris to make the kind of statement he made. I also feel that the Democratic Labour Party, in order to regain the confidence of Barbadians, there still remains some work to be done. Among that is some serious research into why we lost. And to basically be very frontal with the people, because we have to look to work with Barbadians in terms of rebuilding the party. And therefore any semblance of arrogance in terms of statements that you make, like for example the DLP had done to apologize for, as I heard from Bobby Morris. I didn't respond to him at the time and not using this to respond to him. But I think we have to be real within the party. We have to recognize that something phenomenal happened, and we are part of the collective responsibility. I never said, for example, that Stephen Lashley emerged as somebody. I'm saying that we are collective in that regard, and therefore we must collectively say to the people and work with people to be able to recover. Now, you asked the question whether if I was the leader of the party, of the campaign, I would have done things differently. Of course I would have done things differently. I believe that you have to be able to set a tone that resonates with the people up front, and when you kick against that tone, you have problems. And yes, if I was the Prime Minister of Barbados, I would have done a lot of things differently. I think one of the things that haunted the Democratic Party in office was, I'm going to say the party in office, I'm not saying individuals. I used to talk a lot, perhaps too much. But I think the people wanted to hear more from the leadership of the country.
Yeah, the Prime Minister.
They wanted to be part and parcel of discussions. I have always promulgated that, we should have had more frequent media briefings, led by the Prime Minister at the time, to talk to the country about what would have been, under any administration, one of the most difficult periods of the country.
And what was his thoughts on that?
Well, I more look at the actions.
The actions spoke a lot.
I thought that was a mistake. And I wouldn't dwell too much on that, except to say that any government operating with the context of modern Barbadian reality that does not recognize that as it tries to emerge from recession, you have to keep talking. And I thought that we had some very difficult decisions and choices to make, but you could not execute solutions without taking the country with you. And I thought that we suffered significantly by not doing that kind of dialogue, and it meant that a lot of good things that the party, that the government would have done. We did a lot of good things, a lot of good things that were done were relegated.
You want name one or two? You want name one or two?
Okay, so given your
I thought analysis, let me say it before you go. I thought that one of the thinkings of the Democratic Party in office at the time was that it focused a lot on trying to shield Barbadians from some of the very rough decisions that would have had to be made. I think that there are deep structural problems in terms of the Barbados economy that continues to haunt us. They were there. If you go back to Barry, about some of his speeches, he had some of the same challenges in that the Barbados economy was largely dependent on foreign goods and services without itself being able to generate its way in the world. You always had, for example, huge deficits to be financed. We were struggling now to deal with that. But the point is that we have to be able to do things a bit differently. And we try some of that. We try different things. But when you are trying to support a huge, amount of social services, at the same time, in a small economy, Barbados is 279,000 people. In a small economy generating far less taxes than before, you're going to head for a challenge. And your deficit and so on, and the downgrades reflected negatively on our economy and so on. But these are things that you still have to fix. And even as you fix them, whether with the IMF program or not, we're going to have to come back to the problem of productivity, and re-engaging and re-engineering our young talent at all levels of the economy to be able to project to doing things differently. I actually mentioned in a forum the idea that Barbados has got to, and the government too, I would have no problem if the government used resources to carefully position a number of our emerging entrepreneurs into global markets, set them up with production of goods and services that are marketable, so that they can actually basically remit their earnings to Barbados.
Correct.
Markets like India and China, certain parts of Europe, has got to be now the bedrock of what Kiffin Simpson has been doing, for example. Only very few of our entrepreneurs. I know that what's his name is doing some of it. The guy who owns Rock Hard, Mark Maloney, doing a phenomenal job in terms
I will figure it out. This is last year that you remember Mark Maloney name.
I was testing to see if you knew.
Yes.
But seriously again, I'm saying that we have to now move towards creating global entrepreneurs, and the opportunities for our young people must be supported by public funding, because in the end, we have to create that impetus to really do the kind of
let me get Simon question in first, and then yours keep on. You have a question, Simon?
Yeah, we just wanted to comment with regards to achievements that would have occurred under your ministry.
With your progress report?
Yeah, of course. I always make sure I walk with this on the program. Yeah, well, it just gives a list of facts of the projects that were undertaken by the Democratic Labour Party. One of the things that
does that help you to feel any comfortable?
One of the things we would have heard over and over, and it's become a soundbite, is the lost decade. And the impression that is given that nothing substantial was done to improve the conditions of people living in Barbados during the 10 years of the Democratic Labour Party, or nothing was done that was significant to advance the country forward under the Democratic Labour Party. One of the things I remember was the whole issue of Bridgetown becoming a World Heritage Site. And I believe that happened under your ministry.
Yes, I mentioned that earlier.
Right, but I want you to go in a bit more to the reason and the rationale behind that, and the benefits that we were supposed to get from having that.
Right, the designation of historic Bridgetown as Garrison as a World Heritage Site is big news internationally. It creates the bedrock upon which other things can happen. Bridgetown, by and large, has emerged to be a pretty dead city. I know my friend has been doing some phenomenal work in terms of the vagrant society, which is important too as well, because you have to have a human face as you are trying to deal with poverty. But there's a lot of poverty in Bridgetown. There's a whole set of buildings that have been left to be derelict and so on. And the fact that Bridgetown has not benefited from a nightlife. You know, people move out of Bridgetown at the end of the day, and it's just there. That's why I support projects such as the Hyatt and so on. But there have to be more projects like that within the context of also preserving the historic importance of Bridgetown. Bridgetown, I don't know if many people understand how important to the world that Bridgetown was over the years, in the early 17th and 16th century and so on. Now, the designation of historic Bridgetown as Garrison was rooted within that. But there's a whole host of opportunities for products to be created, for tours to be done. I remember speaking to somebody about linking Washington with Bridgetown. We have a George Washington House. And I did a tour of Capitol
Capitol Hill.
Capitol Hill,
Yeah,
and listened to a tour guide talking about George Washington. I asked him, but do you know that there's a George Washington house in Barbados? He said, Barbados? Well, I didn't know that. And he became interested in linking that tour to the George Washington house in Barbados. So there's a huge opportunity, and the fact that you are designated a World Heritage thing creates that heritage pull. Every crop over, for example, there are heritage walks throughout the city. That has also created a host of visitors who come to Barbados just to be attracted to see
history.
I want to see this historic Bridgetown. I want to see
You know,
Garrison.
Trevor Marshall, he does tours.
He does tours as
Bridgetown
well.
every day.
So that helps too, because don't forget, although we rely on tourism as our main source of revenue, tourism has got to be refreshed and diversified.
That's right.
And that creates heritage tourism is probably one of the biggest drawing cards in the world. And if we were to then better manage this and market what we have had,
Because we can also tap into our own locals.
of course.
We don't travel a lot of places in Barbados. I mean, we might just stick to, let's say, the South Coast,
And
the
West
West Coast,
Coast.
the town.
Yeah, that's right.
The rural areas in the country, St. Andrew, St. John, St. George, St. Thomas, that Barbadians probably never even went to Harrison Cave.
But one of the things is I saw that for me working in town for years, I felt that Bridgetown was seriously neglected and neglected at large. Even when I made the comments several times that when I came to dealing with the homeless just about 10 years ago as well, we had about 40 something persons recorded as vagrants in Bridgetown, and by the time we were finished, we had close to 700 persons that were recorded homeless or vagrant in Bridgetown. And I mean, coming to us for assistance, but by and large, a lot of them were coming to Bridgetown to stay. Then we were having our town, which is always since polluted, and then we were having also the Spice Town, the whole town. And I thought that Bridgetown, well, I appreciated Bridgetown had World Heritage to it. It was poorly looked after. It was still a very, very, very serious area when it became when it come to rain, especially the Bastards Road. People were suffering down in the Orleans and the Chapman Lane. That I think that being Bridgetown is a World Heritage site, that a lot more emphasis would have been given. Well, I could appreciate Hyatt. One of my biggest challenges with Hyatt, and it's still with Hyatt, is that you're going to put a Hyatt there, but how are the people from Nelson Street going to benefit? How are they going to be impacted? You have homeless people there.
Are the jobs going to go to them first?
Well, no, it's good, but also that you have to look at the Nelson Street is not only about jobs, but it's a very in some cases a very dangerous area. You still have a lot of prostitution around the area.
Unique services.
So it's unique circumstances too.
That's right.
Right?
Services.
But again,
Specialist services.
are a lot of this being taken into consideration when it comes to project? Because I remember years ago I saw one of the homeless in the paper, front and center of the paper with Chris Brown. Begging Chris Brown. And now you could be I'm a Hyatt member all over the world, but you could be affected now. Who knows, because you're not taking into consideration a lot of other factors.
That's why you see my view on that is we have to look more at the opportunity that Hyatt, for example, creates or other investments. But Barbados has been on a campaign for years to woo investment into Barbados. We really need investment, yes. What we have to do is to ensure that the investment that we attract makes sense in our locale. There's a huge opportunity depending on how you angle it. I don't know all the details in terms of what the Hyatt project entails. I know there have been town hall meetings and so on, people voicing their own views. But it must be part of the government's policy that when we introduce projects such as the Hyatt into, let's say, a Bridgetown or whatever, that there is a wider picture, which is part and parcel of the holistic development of the area.
Yes, sir.
We have to use our what can I say? We have to find creative ways to make investors understand that yes, you want to achieve a brand in Bridgetown, but you know what? We have some issues that we can actually work together in solving. Whether they're homeless issues, and there could be creative projects that are linked to Hyatt that solve some of the issues pertaining to homeless people. And as you know, a lot of the homeless people are very brilliant in terms of their intellect and the things that they can do with their hands, they're creative and stuff like that. and they can be reabsorbed.
Yeah, the only people that find themselves a hard time, they're still human beings, they're still active human beings.
Well, exactly. So I'm thinking that there must be a meeting of the minds.
I agree.
Rather than say to the investors, well, don't come, we are wanting to hire. Look at what, Haiti has some challenges, but I think Haiti has been able to approach some aspects of its development when it comes to branding in a particular way. When I went to Port-au-Prince, for example, there is not a Hyatt, there is a not Hilton. I think it's a Hilton hotel in that city. That basically everything about that hotel is Haitian. It has a brand, but if you walk through it, the doors that have the nice metal and so on, that's created by people in Haiti. You know, the everything, the mats on the floor, everything. So what I'm saying is that we can find ways through the use of investment to solve some of the challenges.
Well, we're pushing these investors because at the end of the day, they come in. I mean, I've asked to meet with Mark Maloney as it relates to this particular issue of homelessness and bringing him back. They had. I said, I am all for investment, but you don't get any return. You don't get any calls. The only time you're going to get a call now is if a homeless hit a tourist or something big happen, and that's when they can turn you down, right? Because that's the police job, right? But again, no, I'm not going to pick up the body, slap this after. If we can work together now and solve these issues. But again, a lot of, even going back to the sandals, a lot of these deals that are signed and a lot of these things that are coming into the country, we hear the big talk about concession, we hear the big talk about how much people they wanted to work and have duty-free cars and all of this, but you hardly ever hear how the Bajan benefited. Now, while I appreciate that it create jobs, and I'm very careful with that number too. When people say to me, it can create 3,000 jobs, it doesn't. It creates short-term, yes, it creates short-term jobs for construction. What I'm saying is it creates, but those guys are sometimes laid off right after. So, but I can appreciate that they get something in between. But here's what.
Then out of season, the hotel scales down.
But that's not even the big talk. But that's not. But what I'm saying is, while you're appreciating that, you it would be good to hear, on top of the concession and the duty-free that we give away, that the people are also benefiting from the culture. The people are benefiting from the artwork. The people are the surrounding neighborhoods, the farmers, and that is stipulated in those contracts. Because these guys, while they could appreciate, sometimes the booking is never done even in country. The booking are done overseas, and then we only get now we have room levy and those sort of stuff that you're really benefiting from. So I'm just saying, with all these projects, while they could appreciate that they will get something, we also need to hear, and it should be done, of what the Bajan getting.
But to add to what Simon said, someone mentioned about the last decade, and it pains me.
You say last or lost?
The last decade, sorry, and it pains me. It's rather unfortunate that some of your good ideas have never been implemented, and that's a worry to me as a Barbadian, and I guess for the other Barbadian, because I wonder if it's Stephen Lashley probably could have been Minister of Tourism.
Well, quite a lot of my ideas were implemented within the context of my ministry.
Your ministry.
Right.
But it seems like you have other ideas that have also assisted other ministers, which wasn't taken to the table.
But don't forget too as well that the government was working in one of the hardest recessionary periods ever.
That's an excuse.
That's not an excuse. It is a fact. It is a fact. It's not an excuse.
FAT.
I think when we discuss these things, because I think yes, there are a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of the past, in terms of governance and so on. I more look towards how we can structure existing and future policy.
That's right.
To avoid some of the challenges and errors or omissions of the past. And it is true, cabinet needs to be a place of the convalescence of ideas.
Yeah.
But also I think they must be driven by what happens at the people level. And I am hopeful that the talk about people's assemblies and so on.
Yeah, underneath the TAR Commission.
Yes. That what we are doing is to establish not just a talk shop arrangement, but meaningful avenues by which people, by structured legislation, can have input into government policy.
Yes.
Because
and the ways that what Kim are saying is, we have to have a structure in which people can be engaged, not just at election time.
Correct.
But along the pathway over the 5 years, that their ideas can be injected, and perhaps even having a way in which catchment areas, for example, we're talking about the Hyatt in Bridgetown. The people in the immediate areas who are impacted should, by legislation, we don't have it now, there's some kind of consultation and so on, but there must be minimum standards set which guarantees that their interest is protected.
Yeah.
You see, and not just having a champion or somebody who goes out and talk about things when the flavor is right for them, and then disappear when the flavor is not right. But there must be, we have to get beyond the talk and get to the structured arrangements that allow for people to say, okay, fine, we know this thing is going to happen, but by the way, whatever they do, there is that language there that says they can't do X, Y, and Z.
I think.
where this point about getting past the talk. Quite interesting. You raised a lot of very important and good ideas. So I'm wondering what you're going to do with all those good ideas. If you're going to just talk about them, or if you're going to actually come back and lend your support to the Democratic Labour Party going forward.
Alright, just before you answer that, let me read some comments here. Keep that. You can think about that. It says nice words. Sean Kennedy said nice words, but the Chinese would eat you alive. That was earlier. Nesta, I think Nesta is in Dominican Republic. Nesta, correct me if I'm wrong, but he had a question.
Yeah.
A lot of mistakes were made by Den Lab. I don't know what that means. What does it feel like to be out of power? Not necessary. We will address that. Yeah.
Another question.
Don't have a comment. I just gave it a comment. Yeah, I'm just giving a comment.
But what I would say is that, you see, my answer to that is that it is important, right? Within the context of our democracy, it is important to have the opportunity to see changes of government. You have the influx of new ideas, new thinking. There is a new government now in Barbados. I think not 2 years yet. But you can sense that people are seeing an opportunity to do what they want to do to solve the problems as they see it. There will come a time, right, when people will be judged based on what they have done.
Right.
So, by the end of the day,
I think they have passed.
But it seems to me, based on what you're saying, that you were actually longing for this change.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that no government can dream of being in office forever.
Correct, I agree.
A politician too, though.
Or politician. No, I actually don't believe in that. That's why my own view is that I don't feel that it should be somebody's call to say that, look, I here forever.
So what about the government initiating the two-term policy? I know in America it's the president can only sit for two. Well, there only been term. What about the term limit? Because we still have some politicians now in government for the last 25 years. I don't particularly fancy somebody serving that long. Right. And you only thing you probably want is if you did.
Right.
What is it?
I believe that you see, there was a time that I actually used to champion that a lot. I think that there should be a term limit at the level of the Prime Minister. Now, within the context of a very small population, you have a lot of people who don't want to see politics because of what they perceive the exposure to politics does.
But I want to get in and people won't get out.
you want to get it?
I want to get in and people still walk about.
That means that you are not doing enough to get in.
No, I mean like from that perspective, I mean I to you.
That's a lot.
Because I to you because you are the face today. But I mean like whereas we are seeing an on term, like, we are seeing that, and we're glad we're on this topic now because we want to get into some meat and some matters here, is that we are also hearing that there are other former ministers that now seeking to run back again in the upcoming election. We've also heard that one person have actually opened the office, and one have also said if they don't run under these, they will run as an independent. Right. And we are now seeing the immersion of some of the former of start to see Richard Seeley speaking. We are also seeing Ronald Jones, Michael Lashley. We are seeing also Jet the Ain, Dennis DeLow. So we're seeing a number of persons coming back, speaking publicly, openly, in it, and that's where I go again with the two term. But now where I know that, for instance, like people like Simon or people like Kimar, well, they're moderators at this point. I know they're interested in politics. I'm interested in politics as well. But it seems to me that person who have served and in some cases are unwanted by the public are still seeking to get back in there, which would, because they're stalwart to some degree, it would find it hard that fresh ideas from people like Kimar that could bring to your party, or ideas that might that could bring to the political arena, cannot even get in.
How do you judge this whole concept of unwanted by the public? Because
I said I didn't judge it.
In the last election campaign,
hold on, don't twist my word.
People voted for the Democratic Labour Party.
How much?
So 22,000.
I got 33,980. Right,
well, even more.
But
right?
I think that figure is 32,000 is correct.
No, I actually put this off of election. The Barbados. But here's what I said.
But the reality is that those people voted for.
I said by some people,
and by extension, the 30 candidates which were fielded by the Democratic Labour Party. So when you say unwanted by the public, you're unwanted by and if you look at
by the public.
Hold on. 53.5% of Barbadians voted. 75% of the people who voted in the last election voted for the Barbados Labour Party.
Right.
25% voted for the Democratic Labour Party.
So these are not right.
Which means that out of the actual electorate in Barbados, only 37.5% voted for the Barbados Labour Party. So you still have, by and large, around 63% of
that didn't vote for DLP.
No, hold on. You still have
the
money. Hold on.
I'm not correct.
The money. Hold on.
Was only
37.5% voted for the Barbados Labour Party. I'm sorry, 35%. 37.5% of the
election Barbados got the thing right here, right? I'm sorry, Caribbean election.
I know which was the calculation.
So I know calculation. You come in. But your point is, as I said, my point is that there are some. Hold on, there are because you don't let me finish my second. You know, by the fact they remain that there are some Barbadians, and you can see it from comments. You can see it with reading. You're reading comments.
I know that.
You're reading articles. If you read enough and to understand when Barbados are commenting, and I mean, one time you used to pick up an article and you see 20 comments, 30 comments, 50. When certain DLP former members speak, the comments are in 400.
True.
And that is only on one platform. That has nothing to do with the shares and my platform, your platform. So I'm saying there's some persons that are sticking up themselves that are unwanted by the public. We can't negate. Well, some may want them. There's some that still don't want them.
It's true. But they'll have the opposition.
Well, hold on. And what I'm saying is, you made me even lose what I was trying to set the beginning.
The term limit.
The term limit.
Yes.
How then does this change, help in the sense that you can't bring fresh ideas like Kimar and Simon, who are in the DLP that are looking to be former MPs, and for like myself or anybody here that could be fresh ideas within the political scene.
Right.
How does it make room for us?
My thing on this, you see, having term limits can help to some extent. It can also, in some cases, create problems. Anybody who wants to run for office,
he's right,
and that is why I believe that Barra and other respective governments place a lot of money. Resources in our education system. Bajans are not foolish. If a particular politician announces, and we have a democracy, as you know, that they wish to run again, and they announce they want to run again, and there is a groundswell of either support for that person or a groundswell of opposition, then that person has to either use some kind of judgment as to where they want to go. It might be surprising to you that the Bajan public have a way of speaking. And sometimes you might hear a particular view and then obviously their actions go in a different way. I feel that all ideas should contend. I feel that if somebody who ran before believe that they want to run for the rest of their life, fine. At the end of the day, the public, the people who have to select this person, have to then pass judgment.
But Mr. Lashley,
there was a guy called Webster in St. John who ran every election. He felt it was his. He ran against Barra. He ran every election because he said it was his right to run.
But Mr. Lashley, before the electorate get to elect that person, the Democratic Party themselves
the process
how to decide on this person.
And it sounds like it sounds well. Verlip the Pizza was on our show. and she would have outlined the processes. I, for one, are more fond of the Barbados Labour Party's process of nomination because it gives the constituents the chance to select who the candidate for the particular party. With your process now, there is, and I'm saying, is a big loophole for interference, for if I may use the word loosely again, I'm not using the word corruption in the sense of money or anything, but it, influence that says, and again, I'm going by what I heard again, that if, let's say for example, Chris Sinclair want to go and run in where he was running, whatever.
But we can use the same example for Verla. Verla won whole percentage against Donald. But then Verla still got it.
But Verla still got it. There was other people. So what I'm just saying. Hold on. Don't. Jermaine, let me off topic now. Let me get more. Jermaine, let me say what you gotta say first.
One at a time.
Jermaine, you're in a DLP member. You're a DLP member.
No, it's not a matter of DLP.
What I'm just saying is, hold on. What I'm just saying is, it has a big gap in between there.
Let me explain.
Because it could be easily, if, let's say, I use the example, if Chris Sinclair, because of who he was and he was a stronghold, wanted to say, let me run down here, there is a loophole that the branch or the executive can say, yeah, he's a stronghold, we can keep it, and Brian Walters, well, doing all the work he's doing now, could be put aside to favor this thing because it has the loophole, because it is only done by selected persons and not constituency.
Can I suggest to you that loophole, as you call it, the reality of the role of the executive council and
the branch,
so on, and also not only that, whoever is the leader of the party and the might that they wield and influence, that issue is both relevant to both the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Party. In other words, I have seen, and I mean, even before Mayor Motley would have become the accepted leader of the Barbados Labour Party, I would have read several letters that she wrote to the party in terms of the electoral process at the branch level. I saw all kinds of things being said, and I believe that she would have known what she was talking about. But it speaks to this issue, and it's not a DLP issue or a BLP issue. It is an issue that is within the context of how parties, the two main parties in Barbados, has evolved over the years. Where whatever happened at the branch or whatever happened in the constituency, it can be overridden, as you're saying, by the higher power.
Right, fair enough.
I want to say both parties.
But there's a difference. People speak.
They usually go ahead.
No, but you're right. They don't say in the constitution. So when you accuse the Democratic Party of what happens in,
you know, got 3 times here, right?
Listen, our argument should not be, and I'm saying that we can argue about it, but there is a reality that this afflicts and affects both parties.
Correct.
Now, one of the things that I said, and one of the things that I'm actually struggling to do as somebody who sat in the cabinet and who has experienced electoral politics in Barbados, is to write a book. And I've started it. I'm on to chapter 3 or 4 now. But one of the things that I've said there is that absent from our political process is real people involvement in the selection of who represent them. And I'm talking about meaningful people involvement. I tend to like the American system where if you want to run for office, you have to present yourself not just at election time, but there are several opportunities that are structured that you have got to be engaged in.
That's right.
So people can test who this
on every
person
aspect.
is.
Ideology.
Questions are asked on one event, they're going to come back the next 2 weeks and somebody asks you a different angle, and you have a very searching media that is going to pull out everything and say, hold on a minute. Last week he said X, this week he's saying Y. Where does he stand? So I'm saying that candidates are not tested enough by a systematic process to determine their fitness for office. And therefore our governance models need to be changed. We have to really revolutionize how we do that, and it has nothing to do, and I'm talking about a process that exists outside of the political party.
Correct.
The political party will have processes that suit them. Whoever the general council, whoever vote for, that is their thing.
Have you ever
what I'm talking about
really said ideas within your party?
Well, no, No, I don't. I'm not an executive or anything. I have ideas.
But I mean, not
but-
before.
No, I haven't talked about them. I'm reflecting on them now because I've
Okay.
gained a bit of experience as somebody who has gone through the system. The things that I would tell you now that in terms of my being a candidate canvassing in across Barbados, that I would tell you now that I would advocate against, and things that I never, as a matter of principle and philosophy, determined from day one that I would never get involved in. But it is not endemic in the system that we have in Barbados.
That's right.
And there are a number of things that we have to face if we really want to rid the system of it. But these are things that I would advocate, and I would advocate them as a Barbadian, as somebody who has gone through it. And I think in the past, because I guess the people continue to run for office, I can't find any material by any former member of parliament really giving the public the benefit of their experiences in terms of looking at structures and systems that can be innovated and changed to make for a better political system. And I think the whole idea of candidate selection, I don't think that candidate selection should only be within the domain of a partisan party. I think people should have to go there and in a structure, and whether they're talking about, at that time I thought about, we need to beef up and change up the constituency councils. But they might be saying different. Make this council or whatever represented body doing something that is meaningful. In other words, we have a system of debates. If you signal you want to represent a constituency, you have to present yourself to this series of people debate where people can actually ask you questions. What do you think about X? What will you do if you have to do Y? So that you can eyeball and say, no, I don't like how he's.
You did that in Barbados. A lot of politicians that.
But no, don't
we wrote very fast.
Don't say that.
What it will do is that it will actually create an environment in which people know that if they want to give what they call national service, that you have to come good in terms of your level of preparation.
But
my observation is that where a lot of people fall down is that they don't come to politics with a well thought out philosophy. And I remember years ago, even before dreaming of being involved in politics, Arabara said to me as an 18-year-old that the real difficulty you have with people who plan for political office is that they're not really prepared.
Okay.
They have not prepared their personal self. Whether you're an entrepreneur or intellectual or whatever, you must come with a foundation that cannot be bought or corrupted. So you bring something to politics, not come to take something out.
But what I appreciate that though, Mr. Lashley, we saw that in the last election, and this is where I may have a challenge with some of what you say, in the sense that I appreciate it, but I said to have a challenge that when we were putting on debates during the last election, I mean series of debates, it was hard to get members from the Democratic Labour Party to even come to attend far more be on the platform. I remember having debate even on the day I was just holding before the DeBrief Show. I mean, I was holding debates across Barbados. I was holding debates. He attended debates. When the day election was called, the day the Prime Minister called the election, former Prime Minister Stewart, was the day I had debate at the Radisson, and Ronnie Grant, who turned up because it was we did a youth debate.
And you wrote to the parties.
I wrote to every party. I have the proof that I wrote to every party, and I spoke to every general secretary and every president. We did one on NGO because we wanted to know how NGO would be involved in the new government going forward. If the government was to be formed back by the DLP. Ronnie Grant at that time, Leonard Eastman, Grenville Phillip. We even respected the fact that UPP and BIM and those other solution bodies, we brought their members, and that day when the election was called, two heads of the parties from the head of Solution and the head of UPP was on the platform at the same time, and they all was able, because it was televised by the media, and they all was able to get up and say, "Wow, the bell rang." They felt good. So these were I felt that some ministers at the time, especially from the Democratic Party, I've always had the support for the other party, is that they were too big. Because when I called someone and say, "Hey, guys, come and debate," they were too arrogant. And everybody wanted to send Quincy. Everything was Quincy. And I was like, what the hell? We here in a minister? He is sitting in a parliament? He is sitting in a cabinet? And other persons were sending, obviously, MPs. Other person, if it was youth and you wanted somebody to shadow you, well, tell me, but I didn't want to shadow people, I wanted the people. So we found that, well, that there were platforms, they were being provided, is that the platform were not used. Well, this is a platform that is being provided now. Yes, we are seeing people using it, and we see people call we and say, hey, you want to be coming on your show next, and blah, blah, blah. But we found that at the time when the DLP were in power, it was hard to really get them to speak. And I'm not saying that where you didn't speak, but it would have been had to be at an event that you were invited to where you get to speak about something else that didn't even matter to the person event. And I felt that, well, we were bringing the ideas because we weren't political. We were people that were, you know, open-minded. When I even wrote the parties to say, hey guys, I want to speak on your platform about national issues, I was turned down even by the side Democratic Party. And I was able to speak on the Barbados Labour Party's platform about issues surrounding homelessness.
Politically?
Pardon me?
But I think
I open to all.
I actually believe. You see, and of course I don't know the opportunities that you talked about, but I understand what you're saying. But I actually believe that the Democratic Party can learn a lot from some of the things that persons like yourself have to say, because you're reflecting on your what your experience has been, and the fact that, because I did preface what I said, is that one of the things that we fell down on significantly was our public outreach and relations efforts. They were not well structured, and they were not of the vintage of what is expected in the context of a modern electoral campaign within 2018. It lacked that, and therefore we suffered. Look, you cannot run a campaign without having proper scientific analysis of the people that you want to capture.
True.
And if you go into a campaign without that, and even as you are seeking to rebuild the party, if you are seeking to rebuild a party, you don't approach it from getting the kind of scientific analysis and pulling of ideas, and even exposing yourself to people who will not say kind things about you. Because I think you have to go through that fire. Persons who would have vented in the ballot box probably have not gotten a chance to vent in front of you. So by becoming Mr. Lashley, you were really whatever it is that they might say. Fine, they might say it in a way that I may not think, but hey, that's what they're saying. I have to be able to understand that is the view. And I do believe that the analysis and looking back and reprojecting would avoid some of the mistakes. I don't believe that in any serious political party an opportunity should be wasted to interface with a group or whatever. That's why when you call me about this, I'm not in public life anymore, but I really don't say no, particularly where I feel that persons are trying to do something I think is necessary. And whether or not you're going to have X view or what, this is great. We need to have all views contended.
I agree.
But in order to build, and I think there needs for a lot of discussion in Barbados, even as we have a government that really has all the seats in office.
That's right.
We need to have structure, and you see where I think we need to go. I'm not talking about calling somebody to volunteer to debate. I'm saying that we should reach the stage of mature political engagement, where by legislation there is a legislated, systematic approach to public debating in relation to people seeking office in Barbados. And of course, whether it is your organization or some other organization, those organizations can be given the kind of authority. Because if you don't turn out to debate, it should be such that you are given chances to come again. But if you don't come, you can't run.
But one of the things I added into the debate, not the thing I do in Kimar, it was that when I did the debate, I made sure I said how to win.
Right.
So how to win was you never lose. You don't get up and admit you lose a debate. You always say, I won that debate, I think I did well. So we even add the pre-question.
As a matter of fact, not crossing, I feel that in the proper restructuring of the Democratic Labour Party and what I call the rebirth, I'm talking the renaming of the party, I think there's nothing wrong with the name Democratic Labour Party. What has to be done is that people must begin to sense that there is a new thinking.
So you would recommend the debates be started in the Democratic Labour Party?
Whether it's in or out. I'm saying that the party can benefit from a series of discussions involving these bees, whoever come, that will say to you, hey, I found that this is what happened with the Democratic Labour Party, and this is why we get vets for doing it. This is why we feel that we couldn't go and vote for you all anymore. Because unless you understand that, you cannot really come
And that's
to the
back into
public.
the research.
And that's why I said that if people have lost confidence in you to the point that they ain't elect one single member of parliament, it means that you have to regain that confidence. So it means you have to interface, and you can't begin interfacing at election time. You have to interface now.
No.
That's
and
right.
you have to rely on the ordinary Barbadians and organizations that are willing to say, but we found X, Y, and Z. This is our feedback. People talk to us that this is where the problem is. And interesting enough, even as people may want to run for a political party, if that party did the necessary analysis in advance, it would tell them who will be acceptable to the public by proper polling and data.
Thing did that Peter Wicker was on our show, and he said that if in September, it was in September 2017, the election would have been called, that there would have been several seats.
No, he said 6 seats.
I said several seats that the Democratic Labour Party would have been able to regain.
Right.
But by the time the country was held for the 90 days, it showed then the country's frustration and everything,
Right.
and then it showed that you would have lost all your seats.
Of course.
So that's a pollster talking.
Yes, and I can guarantee you that I believe that was a mistake that was made that would have led to a lot of disaffection. But I can guarantee that going forward, no government in office will ever try that.
But you
What was the reason for that?
Yeah, go ahead.
What was the reason?
I can't tell you because I'm not in the head of the
But you
person.
just mentioned about
That's not a fair
being
question.
able to interact with the constituents. And I think, as you will know, that a leader should lead by that example. And at this time, the leader of the Democratic Party have not been able to announce which seat she will run for. And the country want to know because they want to know.
Want to know? No. Do you want to know?
The country want to know.
You want to
Kimura
know?
Yes,
want to
I
know.
want to know.
I'm sure that you also want to know.
Of course.
I want to know who you want to do.
But I know already.
You know already.
I know already with
So why
confines
is
of
it?
the
So
party.
is there lack of confidence? Is there some lack or whatever you want to call it? That the Democratic Party leader cannot come out and announce
There is
to the
none.
Barbados
I think
why it is that where which party, which constituency is she running for? Is it St. Lucie?
Not speaking.
Is it Christchurch?
I am not speaking on behalf.
St. John?
I am not speaking on behalf of.
Is it St. John?
my comrade
We also
president.
hear that you also put your hand in your hat
You're hearing-
to run for St. John. I also
You're
hear
hearing
Chris Sinclair.
things. You're hearing
Put his
things.
hand in the.
But you can only hear.
Right, you want to hear, and then you wait to receive.
We don't wait.
You don't wait.
We want to hear.
You want to hear. You want to hear, or you want to know.
We want to know, hear, or know.
What I can assure you is this.
The last time the bus,
Well,
was waiting for persons at the board. When the person
Yeah,
at
the
the
bus.
board had no bus, the bus went and left them.
The last time I remember I did an ad for Ole on the bus.
Yeah, you want with the ad now.
Right, they want office. Well, that's one of the reasons why.
What
Now, I'm saying
is the
this.
relevance of what you just said? Everyone's
I'm getting to the point. I'm getting to the point, man. That I believe sooner rather than later, I can't tell when, that there will be an announcement of candidates. for the
Something you're not
Democratic
telling us
Party.
nothing new. There's something we know already.
Right, so that's what I can tell you.
That's none of voice.
That's all I can
Christmas
tell you.
will come and gone.
What I can say
If-
to you
if
is
the
that
proposal-
I have a view that you see, my view about representing people is that there must be a call by those people. Sometimes people seek to enforce themselves on people to their detriment. The people.
You mean candidate versus
Yes.
constituency?
Yes, the people in the constituency know who they want to
Correct.
represent. The person who tries to enforce themselves on a
Will lose.
constituency does it to their peril.
That's right.
And I
We saw
think
it.
that
We saw
we've
it.
seen that happen
We saw it.
repeatedly
Yes.
in
we
terms
saw
of
it.
electoral policy in Barbados, and therefore we will see what happens. I think that to me currently my interest is in there's a lot of interesting things happening in Barbados as we're seeking to move Barbados forward. We've had challenges, and every Barbadian knows we've had challenges. The government is encountering a lot of challenges that they're seeking to restructure the economy and so on. Past governments went through it. On the Sanford, had the same issue. Barra experiences and so on. I want us to get to the point where Barbadians, whether you're a BD or whoever, see this period as a period of engagement. There'll be times to criticize the government, but I have a different view. I happen to believe that where the government needs to be criticized, fine. But I take a different view to what I think the last government did while they were in opposition. this notion of criticizing and not offering
Solutions.
ideas,
Mhm.
I don't believe in that. I think
Mhm.
I've seen, for example, no Prime Minister Motley, and they had a policy of criticizing, but didn't feel as though they should give ideas to a large extent. I believe that Barbadians, well, you're critical, particularly given the Democratic Party's profile now. I am more of the vintage that criticism must be balanced with ideas. Ideas ought to be freely given.
True.
Now, you have to implement the ideas, but I am more for looking at purposeful ideas to develop and strengthen Barbados. And if there's anything that I feel that can benefit, whether it is implemented by the government or not, I am willing to do it.
But we have
See,
seen
before you go,
Mhm.
I am also of the view, because one of the things that I think that can be innovated and changed, Barbados can benefit from having constitutionally structured a period of transition when there's a change of administration. I like the idea, and I would do it happily. I would have been anxious to do it in the sense of where I felt that our ministry made some significant achievements. And actually, I encouraged the ministry to publish a document, which they was not finished, but they have a copy, which a host of achievements in the youth division, the youth entrepreneurial scheme, all the things that were done, national youth policy, culture, and so on. But it would be useful for when the government changed, for there to be a transition period which is constitutionally recognized, that ministers have to hand over. Foreign ministers, for example, have to hand over to the new minister.
True.
I think it would benefit that minister, where you have to do a properly structured report, and you go through a period of handing over to that person. In other words,
The
this
US
is what
system.
we have left.
The US system.
These are the things that were blah 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 blah, and so on. Because many ministers enter office without having a clue about what is there. They may have notions, or you may pick up some cabinet papers and read, but we should not be at that level. It should be this mandatory period of transitioning, whether it's at the prime ministerial level. The prime minister has to sit within and ensure that Barbados benefit. Not to think that people still have the opportunity to criticize, but I think at the end of the day, you should have that process of transition.
Yeah, you had a question for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I don't have too many.
Well, equal all yours.
Okay, what I was asking is,
You ask it
with,
though.
at the Democratic Labour Party's annual conference, there was a saw your name pop up for the leadership of the party. However, we saw that your name was removed from the list. So I'm hoping you could clarify why it was removed from the list, and given the fact that persons see you as a potential leader of the party, be it now or in the future or whatever, how do you see yourself playing a role in politics going forward between now and next election or even the one after that?
Right. I think people need to understand that the way in which someone is nominated, you're nominated by branches are free to nominate.
This is within the party.
Within the party.
Right.
But the individual must get to a point where they are feeling that they at that point in time can go forward and take on whatever role it is. And I think it's a natural process of once you are aware that you have to be nominated, you're given an option to say, well, do you accept the nomination or not? I did not at the time accept the nomination for personal and other reasons, because I think, frankly speaking, the first opportunity that occurred after the electoral result, you are talking about, certainly in my case, a member of cabinet who worked exceedingly hard for 8 solid years, and I would have now had to transition back to my professional life as a lawyer. I made a judgment that it was not the right timing for me to take on the leadership of the Democratic Party at that time. And I was very early in saying it to the persons. I think you have to get to that point where you don't allow somebody to manufacture your political
Future.
role. If that happens, it will happen. But at that point in time, I made a very incisive decision, and I said no. Because frankly speaking, yes, on 2 occasions. But I frankly believe that, you see, persons need time to reflect and to rest themselves and if there's going to be a future involvement, do that. But this notion of rushing from one thing to the next, even whether or not you are ready in terms of your spirit and your own thing, it has to be something that you have to think of very, very, very.
So any future political aspirations?
I always say
Anything is possible?
my introduction to politics was not even something that I can say that I can take any particular. I didn't go there and machinate anything. There was an opportunity that a time that I felt that I should give back some of the years of my life to Barbados, and I was called to a constituency to represent it. I will not say no to if Barbados calls on Stephen Lashley again to help Barbados, but that would have to be something that I would time very well and also think very well. In the meantime, I don't necessarily believe that any one of us should sit down and believe that, that there is some magical moment that Barbados will somehow, or you have to enforce yourself on Barbados. I think having served, sometimes you have to humble yourself. You have to, yes, contribute to Barbados development, but don't necessarily go there and force yourself to like, I am the one. I think if it is to happen,
it will happen.
It will happen.
Well, I want to go back to something you said as it relates to the criticism, and we've seen it. Like I'm going based on what the papers are putting out there. That every time, what I believe at this stage that the Democratic Labour Party is a third party, in the sense of that.
I didn't hear.
Well, in the sense that there's opposition now.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And the Democratic Labour Party is obviously in a rebuilding stage. It has been damaged severely by the blow that was given to you by the electorates. Now, I found that in the papers, everything is being bashful by the leader of the party as it relates to whatever is said by Mayor Motley or whatever is being done in the country to advance the country. It's always that negative criticism.
Everything is criticism.
And that's what's everything I pick up the paper. I don't know.
Everything.
Yeah, every time.
Almost
Every time. Yes,
issues.
please. And also know that you're seeing the former ministers also including in their speeches some bashful things. What I find at this time, and I love to give the suggestions as well with what I say, is that it's not nobody's job to, but I just saying, as I agree with Mr. Lashley said, you're giving criticism, but also you have to give some sort of balance and solution.
That's it.
And I find that we just have grown in the past accustomed to this. Somebody say something negative and everybody fired up. I feel that people want to hear what's going on in our country. What's the plans for our country now? I, for one, don't want to hear the type of politics that I heard in election.
They start speeches.
Especially one that was given by Blackett or whatever.
I can't recall.
So you can't recall that. He was out there too. But anyhow, the fact that those are not the type of things that we want to hear as a country, I find that as the Democratic Labour Party tends to rebuild, it has to come from a standpoint of a balance. Because people are now saying in the comments again, you bashing this, but what you do? What you government do? You had 10 years. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. But I think people will be receptive to hearing if there's a good, you say, well, kudos to that. We could agree on that. However, you might put your less political swing in it as well. As we grow, because while you're in the growing stage, it feels like it is like a party that does not understand defeat. It sounds like a party that does not understand where it sits. It's just going to be, it just seems like a party that's, as the Prime Minister opens his mouth, the opposition leader opens his mouth. As this, sorry,
you recognize
I recognize it, but I give kudos. Joe Ali is the opposition. I recognize his party as the opposition.
Well, one of the things that I spoke, it wasn't covered because I think the branch did not invite the media, but I addressed the St. James South branch of the Democratic Party.
This is Don Business?
Yes.
Okay.
And I did some research before I did, because I spoke of I spoke to the new Barbados economy, and I researched some of what I think the philosophical mores of Arabara, both from the context of social and economic engineering. And you see, the Democratic Party needs to, in my view, revisit the Arabara philosophy Some people believe that it is not relevant, but there's a lot about the Arab philosophy in terms of taking political stance and strategy that I think would be relevant for what's happening in Barbados today. We have a very unusual situation where a party that has been around for 50 how much years? Does not have a voice in Parliament, and it does not have a voice in Parliament because the people did not believe they should have a voice in Parliament. The rebuilding and the kind of strategies that are necessary to deal with what is still a very sensitive situation. Because I think coming out of the election, and my feedback from people is that there's still a lot of sensitivities and hurt in the minds of the public about the Democratic Party's last 10 years. There are people who would tell you that there have been some highlights, there are a lot of pluses, but there are still at the global political level. People have their views that influence them into making a decision they made. No matter how good Stephen Lashley would have done in his ministry, no matter how good whoever they have done in his ministry, they attack certain things. You understand what I'm saying? And even as I speak to you, I hear certain things that I consider to be new to me, that I may have a philosophical difference too. I think that in coming to the public with any statement or any approach, you have to be mindful of that. It's almost like you have to understand the political climate, and therefore your stances and so on has got to be thing. But I don't think that the Democratic Party is irrelevant to Barbados. I think the Democratic Party has the opportunity now, having been thrust back into opposition.
Well, not being irrelevant, don't you think that those who speak that the country may not want to hear makes the party irrelevant?
Because I think that, and but that's tied into what I'm saying now. The only way you can understand really and truly what people want of you, or what people accept from you, is to spend some time in the wilderness, in the political wilderness.
Away for
understanding first.
For years.
Because really and truly, I don't think people pass judgment on the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has a pristine opportunity. Not initially coming and shouting from the top, but spending that critical initial time.
When you say the Democratic Party, just for understanding the view, you're talking about those who would have run. What are you saying within the 16 members, or are you talking about the entire party?
I'm talking about because the party knows, because the party does not have. When I say the party, I mean whoever speaks on behalf of the party, because the party has an executive, and I started by saying that I am speaking on behalf of the executive. Last time I spoke at a DLP lecture, the person who was sent to speak after me made the public comment that I had no authority to speak on behalf of the party. I never claimed to.
But did that person have a purpose?
No, they didn't have the right. So therefore, I said it up front now that I'm not speaking on behalf of
Fair enough.
But I have views as a Barbadian, and there are Barbadians who have views that the DLP can benefit from.
That's right.
The views that Barbadians have may not in 2019 or 20 be in favor of some of the things that are being said in the DLP, but that is good. Because it is that right now there's a void, in my view, existing between the Democratic Party and the people. We have to be able to get past that void. To get past that void, you have to go into that wilderness and understand again where you need to get to. And it doesn't have to be rushed.
So
it does not have to be rushed.
What's the role in all of this?
But I don't know. I am not in any.
Frankly
speaking, my role, I believe that my role, whenever I am called upon to interject, or if I feel I should interject into the public discourse, I will. But my role, I don't have a role on the executive with the Democratic Party. I don't have a role.
People, you need help. You want help?
What I'm saying is,
see, what somebody said, you're in the wilderness, but not in dungeons.
Right.
That's a plus.
Exactly.
What I'm saying is that given the situation that the party is in right now, the party can benefit from a lot of the ideas that you're putting on the table.
Right.
So negating the fact that you're not on the executive, you don't have to be on the executive to participate and to make a contribution.
Right.
So I'm asking you, what is your intended role going forward in contributing to the party as executive or executive? No.
I don't know. I don't know if you want to hear my answer on that in terms of what I feel. I am always open to give my ideas and my thoughts and so on. But what I can say to you is that I have learned, on the side I've learned from the past. I'm no longer a part of somebody in public life who've just entered. So therefore, I believe that Barbados and the Democratic Labour Party can benefit from not having views that people necessarily want to hear. They can benefit from honest assessment of what is required. And I'm prepared to give that honest assessment. The question is whether people are prepared to hear, listen, and
that may be a challenge.
Although you're not putting it as A, B, or C, but when you read between lines, I clearly understand what you're speaking of. And I think the other gentlemen in this room clearly understand what you're speaking
I
of.
don't want to say.
I've said it, right? While I appreciate that the government, that the Democratic Labour Party in its rebuilding stage, I just believe that while coming back out of the wilderness, sometimes it's got to left the wolf in the wilderness or leave the grass in the wilderness and come to front.
Yes.
Because you're going to need some fresh people.
Of course.
You're going to need people that the public does not have an integrity problem with, a moral problem with, whatever issues that the public may have or perception the public may have of the party, while coming out of the wilderness, gonna have to be able to leave majority of that behind by coming to say, I'm running new front runners, while the others could play just like yourself may say. I may not be willing to come to the spotlight now, or I may be willing to come back in the race 5-10 years from now, but at the end of the day, have young people like Kimar, young people like Simon that need to be tutored or need to be brought up and mentored. And that is where I believe that the problem is along the line. There's so much of the Democratic Party former members that I seriously have a problem with. Right. And not necessarily as a person, because I don't have personal relationship. And I can say clearly for you to know, I voted the Democratic Labour Party twice. As a first time voter, and the second time, but on the third trench it was hell no. Because of the level of treatment I personally received. Even as a young person doing so much in this country, you still felt like you were not doing anything. You were being pushed aside, you were being disrespected, you were being you get on like if you were more recognized by people abroad than even your own. If I bought a pen for Barbados, I bought that in a store in the States. I never could get it here. And I'm just saying that even in those that know that you may have persons like us that have track records as well, proven track records, don't have morality problem, don't have integrity problem. And I'm not saying people don't say things about us. Mom may say you're a bully here, mom may say you're a thief there, mom may say you're everything. But I'm just saying we're not as we never had the political life to judge us in that sense.
Someone just asked a very interesting question.
But in a sense, we as young people or as new people, as fresh blood with ideas, people sit on the show all the time and they hear us. They hear our ideas. We are now in some of us public limelight. They see our track record. I just built a big building downtown for the home. People see the track record. These are track records that we can say to Barbados we can offer. But as I said, if you're in the wilderness and you're bringing back out the same set of people, you can might as well stay. You can might as well stay in the wilderness.
And but you see the thing about it is that, and that's why one thing I welcome coming on a program like this, because I think the party can benefit from having different ideas. And not only that, that's why I said that there must be a recognition that there were things that were done
personally and publicly
that upset people.
Yeah, I voted you twice.
You understand? So once you recognize that and you are showing that you're willing to understand that there must be a shift, a different repositioning, and in any event, there's no way that a party operating in 2019 or 18 can be the same party in the next 5 years in terms of its focus. The Barbados reality is going to change.
That's right.
There are going to be new issues on the agenda. You have to be prepared to be relevant in the next 10 or 5 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But in doing that, you have to build on the capacities of persons who may not necessarily agree with you. I don't think you should agree with me. I think that something is wrong. I think you should feel challenged by you saying to me, frankly, look, I disagree with you. I feel you should go in this route. We have to become more inclusive, more tolerant, both internally of the party and outside of the party. and there must be a focus on re-engagement.
Mm.
There's so many groups, both NGOs, private sector groups, who don't necessarily agree with everything the government is doing. I mean, I feel if the government felt that everybody agreed with them, they would also be on a particular cloud. But the important thing is that whether you like it or not, Barbados has to be managed.
Yeah.
I think we all want what's best for Barbados. And therefore, I think that the party, the Democratic Labour Party, must evolve as a party that is interested in the well-being of Barbados in terms of being seen as attached to what's going on, even if it means sitting down and having conversations with the existing government. Because you have to be proactive as an opposition party, and therefore you have to do this and start to engage in the consciousness of people like yourself and yourself who have to be. We have to get you guys to start thinking that, hey, well, you know something, I gotta reconsider Democratic Party. I like that fellow. I like who you're talking. That has got to be part of the rebuilding part, and you can't do it by sitting in George Street. You have to do it by re-engaging and exposing yourself to some. Hopefully, you can hear some criticism. There are colleagues, of course, who have to be able to respond to whatever it is. I believe in the policy of engagement. I believe in explanation and explaining. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. But if you admit you're wrong today, hey, I don't think that will be held against you continuously. It is where you don't admit that you're wrong. Or that, look, I could have done something better. That you continue in that anyway.
I think, and one of the fundamental mistakes that I see from as a party member as well, some parts of the party tend to more focus on the last decade and speaking about achievements. Well, hearing achievements is good. You made the point that the public already passed judgment on those achievements, and they're found to be wanting in some regards. So coming back to push that same narrative again of our last 10 years of achievements, to me, butting your head against the wall. When the public wants to hear about the future, what are you coming to offer, or what are you coming back?
You mean as your party?
Yes. What is the DLP going to contribute to youth, particularly to the elderly? But how are we going to solve the issue of garbage with a new DLP? How are we going to solve the issue of transportation? How are we going to fix the foreign exchange problem? Do you have any alternates to the IMF program, or what are those? I think this is really conversation needs to be.
So that solution that he was talking about, but in the far those solution rather than criticisms.
Yes. So what I'm saying, I know I see. I mean, you guys might beg to differ to me some regards, but Rolla has been trying to push a futuristic conversation in some regards to the DLP, but then there's incoherent messaging coming out.
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
From
I'm hearing it. Like I hear the futuristic message.
You're hearing one part of the conversation, then somebody else is hearing another part, and then there's a convoluted message.
So that's one thing that y'all need to probably strengthen on the Astro Walk B luncheon lectures, because again, sometimes we are hearing it. You're hearing you're hearing criticisms rather than saying, okay, we believe that these are some of the solutions that can be put forward. Again, remember we had Granville on the show, and Granville was pointing and saying, hey, you want my solution? Go up on Solutions Barbados page, it's all there. Well, many may believe that the government may not be in many may believe that the Democratic Labour Party may not get back in power for the next 15 years. There's nothing wrong with putting out solutions to say, hey, these are some of the things.
Also remember that the reality of politics is this. That's why I always say that even to say that the present government be in office for the next 15 years.
That's prediction.
Yes. But what I'm saying is that, you see, I sense there's a new kind of expectation among the electorate in Barbados.
Y'all set the DLP set the bar for that.
Yeah, set the bar for that. So as of now, no government can rest on its laurels and pretend that certain things. And I tell you, it's happened MP by MP, and that's why there's a saying in Barbados for years that the higher the monkey climb, the more showy tail. Each person will be judged. Not, and I saw it. You can talk as much as you want to talk. You can have as much pretty language as much as you want. unless you have an agenda for execution of key things that you promised to do, you're going to have a problem. All right. I happen to focus on execution. I speak, yes, but I only spoke as a minister when I know that what I talking had substance and was rooted in something that I could do. So I had an agenda for ensuring that some of the things at the end of the day, when I get to the end of year 5, I have the things that I said where I can go and say, look, this is what I do. And I think going forward, people are going to judge whoever sits in that throne, because let me tell you, when you sit there in that driving seat, okay, is a completely different picture than when you were in opposition.
Yeah.
You now have to, there's no excuse, and there will be a time when the government cannot reflect on anything that the Democratic Party has done.
Yeah.
But this is good. It is saying, look, this is what we came and found. It is up to us, and it was up to us. And I think the mistake we made, this government or any other government should be in a position to come and say what they came and found. You know, if the Democratic Party PR and machinery and information strategy was acute, Barbadians would know what it is.
Let's say corruption.
And therefore,
if they found corruption,
I'm saying
or whatever.
that the challenge we have now is that even things that we didn't do, the current government is in the position to say that, look, they did that, and we ain't got the robust record that I wanted to have or to see, where we are out there and you're talking to the country continuously, and people ain't got to know, be told what we did to know already. So what you have is the opportunity for misinformation. And also, even if you are, I don't think that anybody meant, there are people who work hard in the Democratic Party.
But wasn't that the reason for facts?
Huh?
Wasn't that the reason for
I
facts?
know, even that was not marketed.
Yeah, because when I went to facts that they look at me and tell me what you're doing there. I said I thought it was a public forum. They said no, UNC logo. He thought.
So all I'm saying is that you see, you have to. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for engaging. Yes. And I think something that I think that should be done. You see, you need some people. You don't need what do you call it, highly marketed branch meetings or a combination of branch meetings.
Or hidden meetings.
You need some good people's forum in which everybody, John Brown, can come and sit and engage.
You know, the Bar State Party when they were in opposition.
We have to get away from this notion that you gotta go on podium. You understand?
You gotta
go and talk about things and our audience. That's not what you need at this stage. What you need is some serious people engagement where the people who are sitting believe they have a voice, and that their voice as a potential voter or somebody who can determine your existence is being heard, and that when you construct whatever document that you construct in terms of what people have said, they can see their footprint in this new rebirth.
Well, I agree that that's what the people want. Well, I agree because the Democratic Labour Party has set some barriers in this country that I don't see this country going back to. So, for example, I think it would be hard as it relates to vote buying because people now want more substance than just a buy and vote. People want reassurance and assurance. People want jobs. I think it would be hard. I said it, and I think I said it on this show, and I said it openly already, that the Democratic Labour Party have left the Barbados Labour Party to be judged more harshly than any past politician, because the eyes are no longer on a party only. The eyes are on the ministers now. Yeah. And we've seen that where certain people are talking, or we say, wait, the minister foolish, or they can't talk, or what, people are criticizing it because the bar has been set. Whereas if you change your car tomorrow, people watching. You was driving a buggy, now you're driving a Mercedes. People watching the house that you move up to. I think that the previous administration have really set that tone that people are not going back to the traditional political ways. We no longer. I hate, and I would hate to go to any political event where people are talking at me. I want people to talk to me.
Right. That's and the thing about it too is that, you see, you also have to be careful. You see, as you are, I think politics, and I know the notion of people looking at what you have and so on. But that can be ring fenced by having appropriate integrity legislation and systems to ensure that whatever you got, because if you could go and you could afford out of your own resources to buy whatever you want to buy, fine. But what the public's trust must be protected in a way that you can't use public funds for it.
And the public should know.
And the public should know
Should
that.
know.
So once you do that, and by the way, you know, even persons who are involved in public, I think we are so thing that we believe that people in public life should not be treated well.
Yeah, like I can't buy a Mercedes
And-
tomorrow, they'll make you all homeless money.
Right. and I think they should be treated well. I think they should be treated well. But I think you have to balance that by the fact of what the country can afford. And if the country is going through traumatic events of an economic nature, you have to be mindful of that, so that you don't appear as though you're living high off the hog.
Perception
And
greater than
people-
reality.
Or suffering.
So, but you see, I think there's a struggle that we have to go through, an economic, social, and political struggle, which had its origins not 10 or 15 years ago. They've had a recurring cyclical structural economic problem that where we have actually supported our way of life by foreign borrowing, right? And we have to signal that.
I want to question though, Stephen.
and-
Do you ever, with reference to the cyclical economic
Challenges.
that you were speaking of, do you see a Barbados in the future where we overcome some of the issues which have plagued us from actually pre-independence, all right, and where we can more or less find a way to become, I'm not going to say self-sufficient because I know that can never happen in Barbados, but we can truly, it can happen in Barbados. You got to be realistic, and where we can truly get over some of these economic challenges. And when I talk about challenges, I said on this show I think 2 weeks ago that things like garage trucks, you talk about garbage collection, you see electricity issues,
water
issues, all these issues, the hospital, the stadium, culture, all these different issues. Every government, and you as a professional politician could attest to the fact that the Democratic Labour Party has run on these issues, and the Barbados Labour Party has run on these issues, and all that really happens every 5 years, or should I say every 10 years when the government changes, is that one body can sling some mud and say, oh, he ain't do nothing, right? I can deal with the issues, but in my mind, I'm like, you said you were going to deal with those issues 20 years ago when you first came to power.
Of course. And the example of that, for example, where I went back to Aaron Barrow's time in office, and he spoke of these same issues where in fact he had to grapple with serious foreign exchange issues. He talked about the need to rebalance because the small economy of Barbados was being impacted on global politics, and therefore things like the WTO and what they were doing to small economies, trying to hold them and so on, OECD as well. So there are all these challenges, and in the small economy such as Barbados, where our people have grown accustomed to the provision of certain social services and so on, without question, and the fact that we've had a number of changes in terms of the dynamics of our economy. Sugar is no longer king. And what we're producing cannot sustain.
Even tourism hasn't really made a profit.
I smell the other when we're talking about
the
the ban of this kind of lettuce. What kind of lettuce?
Romaine lettuce.
And it occurred to me that we can't even produce our own lettuce. We are importing practically everything. Now, one of the things that I support wholeheartedly, okay, is a kind of a placing at a very important priority. Barbados's engagement within the CSME environment, and to because that is our avenue towards creating a bigger economy, a bigger market for Barbados. Barbados has to thrive in a bigger market. That immediate market is the CSME market. We have to push that and not see ourselves.
I think we put a pin there for a minute. Whilst you're on the show, I would also like your opinions on Prime Minister Motley's, well, it was Edmund Hickson who announced it, managed migration into Barbados. It would be very interesting to get your opinion on that as well.
And I think that is something that is relevant. You can't ignore it. But I think the Prime Minister spoke this. Barbados is the lead in relation to the CSME. And I think we need to be more energized and take advantage of it. I believe that the CSME must evolve very quickly as being a market that Barbados and entrepreneurs in Barbados can move throughout.
Okay.
And basically, if we see ourselves as just being on this rock, these challenges will continue. What we have is a stabilizing program. We call it BERT. Sandifer called it something else, and I think Tom Adams called it something else. there were points in terms of a global economic recession impacting on Barbados. The
Yeah.
government responds by immediately trying to protect its foreign reserves, and the IMF is there for that. The IMF cannot be seen as a sustainable,
As an economic tool.
a
It is not.
sustainable
It's not
thing.
economic
It is almost like a time at which you can stabilize. But then after that period of stabilization
Yeah,
is
we
over,
know.
it can only get into growth when you start to look at the essential ingredients
Okay.
of what's required to grow the Barbados economy. And I feel too, because I talk about this at a meeting, CARICOM meeting in Guyana, we have to put it on the agenda. You know, the whole question of a political union in the Caribbean. Now, we don't want to talk about that because everybody wants to be their own chief in their own country.
I remember Eric.
But-
One
but-
from
but-
zero
but-
means
what you said
leaves-
about
one from
political
10
union.
leaves
But a
zero.
political union, we had the experiment of the federation many years ago,
That was led by Granny Adams.
He was
Yes.
the first prime
It was
minister.
the first.
which failed because of a number of things. I don't know that if we are, and leaders in the Caribbean dance around it. We are small, vulnerable economies, and we all have our own parliaments. We all have our own political, existence and so on in the Caribbean.
Mhm.
But why have we not engaged on the question of moving towards a political union? It doesn't necessarily have to be of the same vintage as
Federation.
what the federation was, but I don't feel that that's something we can escape from. It has got to be part of the agenda, given global politics,
That's right.
given the fact of our sizes in the Caribbean, but it has to be something that engages our young people.
Exactly.
Our young people in terms of what, because soon you guys gonna have to be ministers or people who are
Only if you get a chance.
who are engaged in the management of
If
the
you get a
affairs of others.
chance.
Well, you know, it's interesting about what you were saying. And this was something that I actually did a project on at UB, where you see how you were here speaking now. You're speaking about the engagement of CARICOM and utilizing it for our benefits. When governments are in power in year 2, year 3, year 4, they talk about CARICOM as this glowing tube. So we can use it to do this, we can use it to do that.
Yeah.
In year 5, you find out the tone shifts, and there's this more or less calling back home everybody, and you're saying, you know what, we don't want any foreigners in our country. CARICOM is bad for us,
Because foreigners can't
right?
vote.
No. If you listen, even the last election campaign, your leader, Prime Minister Stewart, he tried to invoke the CARICOM clause as a last bid attempt to get some votes, right? So he said, "Oh, we can remove ourselves from the CCJ," right? I remember, I know it was very disappointing when AFA invoked it in the 2013 election, right? In the 2008 election, the Democratic Party used it as a bargaining tool, right, to get into office.
And the notion of removing yourself from any institution within CARICOM is a
Suicidal.
I know.
I want to hear what Kimara had to say in terms of saying it can't work. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Why you say that it can't work?
Yeah, you
We
stand on
need to
that.
come to the
Yeah.
realization that CARICOM has significant barriers to facilitate a seamless transition into one political union. You made the point that we all have different parliaments. Here comes the issue of sovereignty. Here comes the issue of the legal environment, the business environment, and cultural factors. Xenophobia is real. And we don't wanna
Very
admit.
serious issue.
And let's take a look at the UBK field and look at geopolitics.
I used to be a president of the guild at one
Yes.
point.
That was a very plausible example of what
I agree.
could happen on a larger scale. So let's take into consideration, if you use that as
As an example.
an example, as we grow, you can only see it getting worse in that regard. And I think it would become, it is a false perception or a false notion that we could push for one Caribbean. I mean, we could have cooperation, yes, within CARICOM, right? But I don't think it could be on a political level where power is involved. When there's the issue of bigger countries, larger contributions, the balance of currencies, and all these issues that you have to sit out and get on a level of understanding. Because I would never reduce my space or stature within the community based on the fact that you're smaller than me. and you're claiming.
But you know, all that you're saying, Europe was able to overcome those barriers and form their union.
That's Europe and
they were much bigger than
But
us.
the circumstances, and the environment surrounding Europe is totally different to Caribbean.
But you know, in the big United States of America, and that's why they call it the United States of America.
Because at one point it was.
Because you have federal government
Mhm.
and you have individual governments in each state
That's
Yeah.
it.
that has a certain amount of autonomy and stuff like that.
That's
That
it.
even
You
president
see,
don't have.
why I mention that is because I believe the discussion must start among younger people, because you either you're going to reject it or you're going to find ways by mere circumstance to find ways to make it relevant. It doesn't have to be cast in a particular mode, but we have to find a way to coexist in a way that we can get the best for each other.
Meaningful.
The collaboration is going to happen. I mean, I heard it mentioned in terms of opportunities now in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
In Africa is a major market. And even the notion of not having a direct flight from Barbados to Africa is to me unacceptable. I not only said it, no, I said it when I was in cabinet. And I talked about it in terms of the need to show that, look, you're not just people who were torn from the African continent. Our ancestors were torn from there, and we are the persons who are now here for that.
But isn't any direct flights from
Well,
Africa? We have to go to Gatwick or something.
But I hope that is something that is started. I mean, there are many reasons why
economic
it's a
decision.
thing, but economic decision. But I'm saying we have to move beyond that, because we have to be able to see that if we do these things, right, what is the direct benefit? Barbados is a very tiny population. But if our artists, if our entrepreneurs, if, for example, the things that we create, whether they're the solar power systems and stuff like that, look, and one of the things that I think that we did a phenomenal job with is in terms of alternative energy.
Yeah, we sure did.
That is something that is there. But what I'm saying is that we have to be able to jump on these gains and take them beyond what they're currently getting, and so they can be exchanged for foreign exchange and do the things that we can do.
You know,
Now you mentioned, for example, whether I can ever see a Barbados that is actually free of these dependencies.
Yeah.
I can. But you have to do it by, you see, rather than me thinking that we can't be millionaires, that we can't be Bill Gates, we can't have the kind of access to economies that other younger people in Asia are controlling. We have to now get in our young people's psyche. That's why I'm saying that I can see a very proactive policy by a government of Barbados to actually do what they call you have to do some empowerment, telling entrepreneurs that they can go there and conquer the world without giving them the kind of financial support in terms of global access and so on. It will not happen. So we've got to do like what was done in the 60s when Arambara said, I am going to use socialism to redirect some of the wealth in Barbados to where it's supposed to be. We redirected it in education. We have to use that same ethos to redirect it in if we want to be able to put a dent in our foreign exchange challenges. We have to be proactive in growing new streams of foreign exchange.
I hear a lot
and
of
I think
those
that's
things
going
about
to
the
be led.
Singapore model now.
Yeah, but I understand though that Singapore is an autocratic state. You don't have the right to do a lot of things. We have a democracy in Barbados. A man said, "Look, I ain't gonna work. The more he ain't gonna work."
But you know, a lot of what you're saying
You know?
calls for education and reform and changing the whole system.
Exactly.
Question though, were you for or against taking away the fees being paid by government to university?
That's a capital decision.
You want to go to school?
I'm asking for his personal view.
What I would say is that the whole idea of, I think the University of West Indies would have had a number of financial challenges, and the government by extent would have been hit by what an expanding university was asking for. I felt, and I still do feel, that the way to have solved those challenges was to be engaging with the university to find a solution that was not too far removed from what the reality was. I think the action of having students pay tuition fees had its intent in terms of saving revenue. It also, even some of the students who would tell you that, look, it also caused some people to start studying. But from a principal perspective, I think that allowing university to function without doing that ought to have been done within the context of challenging the university to start earning streams of foreign exchange. In other words, the university is now doing some of those things, creating an international presence, having students who are going to come into Barbados to enjoy this beautiful education, high quality education we have, and bring their money. You see, so I think it has to be done with that, where you have to look at how you're going to earn your foreign exchange to allow the university to function.
But don't they already have a lot of original counterparts coming into Barbados to go to university?
Yeah, but we need also to have some international people. And I think that had we done that, there would be no need to do that. I would also say that, on reflecting on that though, by attaching fees to persons at university would have almost made those people made a final decision that they wouldn't support who imposed those fees. So it was not necessarily a wise political decision.
I want to make
like $12,000 debt in student loans that still have to be paid back right now, and I think that it was done kind of rash, honestly, and there were persons who were at UE like halfway and I just had 1 year left, and they still had to drop out due to payment of fees. So I think that as a gift, I mean, it may not be totally plausible, but to help that younger generation who know how to pay back this money in a hard economy where jobs are not so readily available, that we could have some type of write-off for persons who study at KFL UE, and even if it's not a direct write-off, there should be some incentive to get those persons off of that financial hook, because it is a problem now to start. You find a job, it's a problem now to actually participate, given the fact that bus fares, the cost of living is going up, and you might need driving a car, gas on up. So a lot of these factors are actually putting up to stifle young people in our current circumstances, and I think something needs to be done to have an injection.
You will find that in any organization, you ask me if we would do it differently, and there are a number of things that individuals, and I find too, even when Prime Minister Myanmar sat in the cabinet with Arthur, she would probably say to you that she might have done some things differently too, but she was not in the seat of power. So therefore, a lot of your philosophical moorings can only be put to the test if you lead a thing. Now, I as a part of, I said to somebody that you have a cabinet. Our cabinet structure is a dictatorship of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is the dictating cabinet. So basically, what you have to do is you either have to determine that, look, if certain policies are not going your way, leave the cabinet, right? Or to spend your time focused on the things that you can control. But you would never be able to control all the dynamics of it. In relation to university fees, I thought that it was a policy that should have been more canvassed. I think what people resented was that it was a sudden policy, but it was not given the kind of collaborative and consultative thing that would have made people, even if they did it, they would know that this is why you're doing it. And that's the mistake that I think.
But you just mentioned just now in terms of if they find that their ideas are not being used and leave the cabinet. Going back to what we were speaking about in terms of sports and culture, and your ideas weren't being used, why didn't Stephen Lashley leave the cabinet?
Because by and large, a lot of what I wanted to have done, I got done. I didn't get a national stadium, but certainly I couldn't fault a Ministry of Finance, and we got the money. What I would have done is to try alternative means. For example, I fought for the track to be laid. I got that done. And then of course I fought for a number of things to be done. For example, we have now a new Daphne Hackett Theatre. When I fought for Carrie Festival we brought to Barbados, it wasn't just for the glory of it. But we have a number of schools, halls that were strategically improved because of Carrie Festa. And therefore what that will do, that will forever be able to offer venues for people to be able to practice their craft. So well, you can't get X. I think that I was able to get a number of things. We now have a new gymnasium, for example. 18-point-something million that the Chinese granted for a spanky new gymnasium. I just hope that they will put it to proper use.
They move up. They still got the
board.
That particular area car park. Okay, that was just
but that gymnasium is now internationally marketable facility that is now designed to bring sporting dollars into Barbados, and is not, to me, is not being done.
Okay.
Right, last question.
Last questions, Jermaine. Anybody got last questions?
You were speaking about UB just now.
Yeah.
Do you think that the University of West Indies, as it is today, is fit for purpose for Barbados and its development going forward?
I think I've heard a number of innovations coming from the university. The university is now about to launch a faculty of the creative arts. So I think the university is responsive. Well, what I think the university should be doing now.
Slow.
But that's the thing, and everything to me is a bit too slow. Hopefully we can accelerate things. What I think the university's purpose must be, and this is the wider dynamic of education. We have to see Barbados now as the place in which we produce expertise for the rest of the world.
Okay.
It cannot be that we are now creating, we're developing lawyers only for the Barbados market. We're developing doctors only for the Barbados market. The Barbados market is a very minuscule market, small market. But where we are smart, we have to now see what we produce, whether it is from the call it scientific, but the Polytechnic, the community college. We have to now create the dynamic for global entrepreneurs, experts in various fields, whether they come from Timbuktu or not. Okay. But certainly our focus on our homegrown talent must be done in a way that we are proactively saying to you, look, we are going to give you the tools, go to the new world and conquer. You know, in the 60s and 50s, we had the remittances, people who left Barbados, and you look at the books, a lot of the Barbados development was done with remittances. Yeah. Now, in this new age, it has to be now grown by these new foreign exchange streams coming from professionals, artisans. A man who decide, look, I can go and create a farm in Guyana, I can grow huge amounts of chickens in Ghana, the guy got a land. That is now the new unfolding economic opportunity for Barbados. And I think that's something where, you know, that is what is going to create the impetus to solve crime, to give young people the option they can do anything that they want. And that's what we got to do.
Last question. To add to some of what you say, well, I take the point of developing persons for international space. I find that education that we receive does not assist the Barbadian economy in any developmental way. Be it in particular, just take the civil service for example, it's not attractive to younger, highly educated persons. So for a man with a degree in, say, like banking and finance or any area like that's highly technical and skilled, he would not take it rather to go into a civil service.
But that was the teachers used to tell.
But by the way, Barbados just announced that it has made a breakthrough in the treatment of prostate cancer. I'm just saying to you that is an example of where Barbados can go. The number of innovations, things that Barbadians are creating, and what we have to do is to allow Barbadians to do that, but not only do it in Barbados. Interesting enough, right? Barbados has this structure where it can offer any kind of medical treatment in Barbados. And anybody can come for medical treatment in terms of the niche of medical tourism and all that kind of stuff is there. What we recognize is that our economy is small. Some people say that they need to bring more people in. I think we need to widen our economic opportunities, and we have to start by creating the kind of synergies, collaborations with countries that we think. Barrow and Burnham and who was the other Prime Minister that sat and talked about it, talked about the Guyana basket, Eric Lewis, and how we could leverage that vast territory that is bigger than England to work for the rest of the Caribbean. Unfortunately, a lot of these things were not taken forward, and because of the efficiencies of governments and stuff like that, they come and they go. But I hope that going forward, we can hold fast to certain key pillars that we will agree across political divide, that we are going to continue, whether it's the D in office or the B in office, that we see this as good for Barbados. And if it's good for Barbados, my position, Stephen Lashley, is that are you going to support it? That's my position. And we got to get into that vein, because at the end of the day, we change governments, but in between that, we have to find ways of proactively, and even if we have to be critical, because criticism is good. Criticism is good, it helps you to stay on your toes. But we have to understand, we have to toss in our 10 cents worth to propel the development of Barbados.
When that issue.
Probably last.
I know one question. I really want to.
Who was it?
Back to-
Put that into that there and the week.
Back to the issue of the civil service, right?
Yeah.
The civil service is in desperate need of reform. But let's take your ideas. The particular ideas that you have will call for some radical reform within our political space.
Right.
But we all know with radical reform comes the loss of political will. So how do you balance the act of doing a radical reform but still maintaining power to keep
That's why you have to continue engaging with people on a constant basis. And you have to develop ways in which, like in Sweden, for example, people can inject into decisions. We have to have a more systematic way of referenda, for example, where we're going to not only consult people at election time, but throughout the period. I mean, I can tell you that one of the ideas that I had, and I think the government is doing it now, I had the project of digitizing the public service now.
Okay.
And we had gone to the point of knocking on the door of the IADB to fund the digitalization of the public service, not only to make it more efficient, but to create an opportunity for young people to be engaged in jobs that are going to be meaningful. And the notion of only engaging young people in token jobs that fade away is really something of the past. Digitalization of the public service will make it more efficient. It will create opportunity for young people that be trained in all aspects of IT. It will revolutionize Barbados, and I think that that's what we have to do. Where our systems are on a platform that makes sense. This notion of going into a line to pay all kind of things. Hey, we got to get into a thing where we are going to buy into this, and that's something that I'm happy if it can happen.
You know, in 2013, I brought a proposal to government because they had the first set of portable digitizers on the island, which means that the government they had to send me the paper. I could have gone to any government offices with my portable machines, digitize you in less than I could have do 30,000 papers in a day, and just get out there. I had 3 machines, so that was 90,000. But that was in 2013 because I was in Bolivia, and they were talking about digitization. And when I came to Barbados, I sourced the machine, and I brought the machines into Barbados. I didn't get any jobs, but I still have the machines there because so you can see that just to touch on the reason why is that you had the idea young persons like myself was already invested because I had a registered business called I still have it called Digitizing Barbados, and I chose that name purposely because I wanted to digitize Barbados. But when you went to jobs and stuff like that, at some point some people didn't understand digitization. I presented to the hospital, I presented to a number of government offices, and I said, hey, I just need 2 days, 3 days. I can come in here at 50 cents a paper, 10 cents a paper, 25 cents a paper, and get all this, take all the papers off your go papers, all the papers that had dog ears, you can't even make out the word on it, and they can digitize it, format it, and you could be anywhere in the world as a minister and want to pull up a document on cloud server. But, you know, so these are things that I think that if you don't engage persons like us, and other people out there that have these ideas and know-hows, we are vast in technology. I mean, I own a technology company, but when we build apps, I mean, how much people in Barbados building apps? But then when you say, look, let me build an app for you, but that's the way the country going, that's the way the world going.
But the other thing about it, we even in certainly in the division of youth affairs, what we had a number of things. We have the youth entrepreneurship scheme where you have people who come with some brilliant projects, but you know what was lacking? Is that those projects did not have the funding.
I didn't want money.
To take them to the next level.
I didn't want money.
I'm not saying you.
Yeah, for me, this is my job.
You have to get to the point where, at a very early stage, when young people are beaming with creativity, they come up with projects. A lot of the projects that are internationally necessary, right? You're gonna have to wait to tap into them, fund them appropriately, and let those projects become, you do the inventions and so on, and you protect it intellectually and so on, but you have those projects work for you. And I'm convinced that some of the things that people like NASA and things require, there are Barbadians who have the solutions to them. But that connectivity and the funding and so on to get it happen ain't happening.
Yeah, and a lot of things is not even the funding related is that opportunity, because I bought my own machines and I found a way that I could have paid for my machine on a monthly basis. One of my machines was $35,000 a piece. I didn't have $35,000 per machine, but I went and negotiated and said, hey, I can pay $300 a month for that machine, $300 a month for that machine. And the person said, well, good, if you could do that, well, we bring them in for you. And well, you did not need the upfront capital. You said, boy, look, if I get one contract, I should be able to pay off this machine. So at the end of the day, it's also that young people have to be given opportunities.
That's right.
Well, I respectfully, even when I look at the consultancy positions, it can't always be the gray hair, the old age. It can't always be the sometimes it could be
it could be the political rejects that the part that did not make it past the electorate, the actual election. Then you gotta find something for them to do. So you create these consultancies that don't really make the sense.
And people like us know that has, like I tell people already, I could probably have made $10 million already if somebody had just given me a chance or an opportunity for my ideas. Yeah. Because, and a lot of people could probably be saying the same thing.
True.
But they weren't given a lot an opportunity, and that is where I felt one of the reasons, well, the DLP fell on, that a lot, I mean, they got bashed for doing the work with the homeless, and I mean, they got bashed at the ministerial level, at different level. So you felt that even as young people bring in, it's just like I'm a person don't give up because I feel on negativity. But at the same time, there are other people that tell me, it's right there. I shop and I gone. Because opportunity, money is not always needed, it's just opportunity.
One of the things I think certainly one of the lessons we have to learn is that we have to learn to listen more.
Yes.
And hearing you in terms of your passions and stuff like that, and the kind of things that, because you're saying what you experience.
Yeah.
We have to listen more and be open to more ideas that need to be embraced. I mean, I sometimes we rate off people too early based on what we hear people say about them, as opposed to listening and engaging with the person.
Thank you.
You see, so I think that, and there's no way that we can.
Just like how you discover Rihanna, you could have probably discover Bill Gates.
Of course.
So, I could say that I think we are probably heading in the right direction again. Then, I in the past I worked at a health clinic. And at that time, in getting blood tests done, I dealt with the results. The results came back on paper.
Right.
Then I had to go and put them inside the body notes and staple it in or whatever.
Okay.
Only recently, like, as of last month, when I went to inquire about the same thing, the results are no longer going to be again sent back with paper. It's on computer for the doctors to read and tell you, well, look, it's negative, positive, whatever the case may be. And that's going in the right direction.
That's happened for a while though.
So as I said, that was way back in like 2012, 13.
The reason why you can tell how long it was happening because my mom actually has to go to the hospital every month. And there is no given month, and my mom has been going to the hospital for the last 4 or 5 years. And because she has blood clots. So when she goes across the road where the HR section of the hospital was and does the blood tests, when we actually, the lab, right, when she does the test over there, when she comes to the actual outpatient clinic once every 3 months, sometimes she doesn't even have to go because the doctor goes into the system, looks at the results and says, well, ma'am, this will show look good, and we just write prescription.
But there's still a lot to be done because there's a lot of notes and things that are written that you can't understand.
Yeah, after the years.
But the question that was asked in the chat group.
The last question.
Yeah, last question. The question was asked. I didn't ask it. It was asked, and we hear from people. They asked where we got the name from. Little Hitler.
That's an interesting one.
Did it have that name? I don't know.
It wasn't a birthday.
I heard it had to do. I guess my approach of managing the ministry, I adopted some very strict rules in terms of targets to be achieved, and I think as a result of that, some people may have grown a little uncomfortable in the first place. Initially, because when I went into the ministry, of course, there were things to be done. When a minister enters the ministry, if you waste time, you really will have nothing to go on. But you have to allow for dialogue, but after dialogue, you're going to make a decision. Some people weren't very comfortable, and then they say, well, you like you hit, look, you're not going to. But I actually lived to see those same people actually saying to me, Minister, you're the best minister that I worked with. Some of those people who resented the change started opening doors for me when they came into the office. So I think people they'll be uncomfortable initially, but once they realize that you are acting in the best interest of Barbados, then they will
more result oriented.
So
I think our current minister is like that also.
So I'm sure she'll love you for that.
Well, when we wrap up,
but I just want to say though, as you wrap up, I want to really compliment this group. I certainly enjoyed the discourse. I think it's a great opportunity for what I think needs to continue is to encourage dialogue and basically to have persons come and sit and be quizzed. You know, I think I was quizzed very heavily today. I hope that I answered all the questions, but I enjoy this kind of thing.
Okay.
And I did observe though that in your group there's no female. Was that an intentional thing?
No comment, please.
No, we invited the females at first to sit with us to come on, and then these were the ones that who said yes.
I can tell you, even as of last week, I asked for one to come on the show, and she told me,
Okay, but I want to compliment.
But we will engage the female guests as much as possible.
Maybe.
Why do we, as men, right?
Gender balance.
Oh Lord.
No,
Let's speak.
No, I don't want to go down.
Oh Lord.
Let's speak.
I want
gender debate, but when women do stuff on their own, women are praised for being strong women and this and that. So where the men doing something now, where we got women in the midst.
Thank you.
Okay, but this is fine. That's your opinion, and we are grateful for it.
We welcome the women though.
We welcome all the females. We thank you for your contribution.
But we are
it says that the females do contribute a lot in the comments.
Yeah, but they're rough in the comments
Rough
all.
in the comments,
Yeah.
man.
And thanks for having me.
And thanks for taking it.
No, thank you for taking it.
I love anyway.
But we just want to thank all the viewers for tuning in as we
We're on
discussed.
for a while, man.
Yeah, we're off for a while, but everybody been steady on too. Commenting still going strong, but we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We want to thank former minister and former candidate, parliamentary representative for the Christchurch Legislature for coming on the show, for taking this segment. We would really like you to encourage some of the other former ministers to come and sit with us as well and be quizzed. We may have heavy presence, Minister of Finance, Prime Minister. We want them all.
Yeah, you were able to St. John.
But you know, as I tell everyone, it's a fun-filled show. It's a chat room that we have, and we just brought it out because we really want to debrief things, make things come down to the level that people can understand, not talk that, but talk with. So
Excellent idea.
we thank you, Mr. Lashley, for coming. We hope that in the near future, if you decide to get back into politics, or if you decide to take over the helm of the DLP, you do come back on the show, and talk with us
I'll show
again.
you if that happens, I'll be back.
You'll be back. Right.
I'm also getting from Kimura that I think he needs you.
Yeah.
To make the party better, to be seen or perceived as better. I think the party needs you.
I like my job and I don't issues.
You're trying to tell Mr.
But next year, 2020 is the year of the gathering.
Yeah,
That's like these are gatherings.
Okay.
Come on, I don't know.
I want to thank everybody for staying on. Michelle and Pro Amoros and all those DLP strong supporters. Working Brown. Y'all DLPs come out in numbers though. That's all I can tell you.
Thank you.
Michelle Taylor, thanks for watching the show. Danielle, thanks for watching the show. We had a concert 30s and up.
Yeah, so thank you guys. Wish you good night and stay tuned to Saturday at 6 as we bring you the debrief show again. Thank you. Have a good night.